who are watching proceedings today online. My name is Tom Slay. I'm the chairman of the Planning Applications Subcommittee, which is convening today to consider one substantive item, 1 Silk Street. Before we get there, I'm going to hand to the town clerk to begin proceedings.
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning. My name is Callum Southern, and I'll be clerking this meeting today. As you are aware, the public element of today's meeting is being live streamed, and those participating in the meeting have given consent to their inclusion. The recording will be available on the City Corporation's YouTube channel following the meeting, and it shall be retained for up to 1 civic year. Whilst we endeavour to live stream all our public meetings, technical difficulties may sometimes prevent live broadcast. In these instances, we aim to upload a recording after the end of the meeting. All personal data will be processed in accordance with the Data Protection Act 2018, and for any further information on that, please feel free to contact us. Please also be aware that microphones will be on a low level at all times and background sounds may be picked up. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Town Clerk. Okay, so turning to the agenda, let me just do some house notices today. The first is we have a change in the membership of this subcommittee. So Dawn Frampton has been appointed in the place of Jackie Webster. Welcome, Dawn. Deputy Henry Colthurst has been appointed for the ward of Lime Street as a ward appointment. So welcome, Henry. And we'd also like to welcome back Oliver Sells, who has replaced William Upton from their ward. Oliver, you're returning former deputy chair, and you're very welcome back in the room today. First of all, can I ask, have we received any apologies for this meeting?
Chair. I've received apologies from Deputy Jaspreet Hodgson. I'm not aware of any, unless any of them.
I'm not aware of any other apologies, so we'll note those. Do any members have any declarations under the Code of Conduct in respect of items of the agenda they haven't otherwise made before that they'd like to make now? Seeing none, we can move on. Item 3 is the minutes. I'll let you do this. I've
been made aware of one error on the minutes of 10 February 2026 relating to Tana Adkin. The KC needs to be added next to Tana Adkin's name. So if you're all content to approve that amendment. I
think we are. Very good.
Thank you.
Therefore, I think we're approving those minutes. I should therefore have said Oliver Sells KC, just for robustness. And, okay. Well done. And then I think item B are the 25th of March minutes.
Yes, I'm aware that Alderman Alison Gowman gave apologies for that meeting, so if you're content to approve an amendment to add those apologies, I'd be...
I think we are. Are we happy to approve those?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we're going to move through now onto the substantive section of today's agenda. And before we consider the application, this is the usual health warning. It's a reminder, as stated in planning law and in our planning protocol, the subcommittee needs to consider planning applications objectively on the basis of evidence of relevant planning issues presented to them. The first consideration needs to be compliance with planning policy. Non-planning considerations, for example, property values or personal taste, are not relevant to our discussions. Additionally, our planning protocol requires committee members to be present for the full consideration and discussion of an application in order to be able to vote today. This may be a longer meeting than average, so I will possibly take a break for a toilet stop. If we adjourn the meeting, then that's fine. We can all rush to the loos then. People have asked about that. I think I will just add that this application has attracted a number of representations, and I know, colleagues, you will have read them. But the decision today will have to turn on planning issues and not on the volume of objections. I may well ask members, when they're contributing in the debate later, to ground their contributions in the relevant policy and the material considerations and ask you what policy your points are testing. Okay, so item 4, this is Marianne.
Thank you, Chair. Just before we start, can I raise once again, as you have just done, the level of information that we have had to take in less than a week? And in fact, the hard copies were not available until, I think it was Tuesday morning, Wednesday, some of us picked them up. But I'm actually flagging up something that came in late last night, the appendix that came in, the appendum pack, where further representation was raised, and I note that the officers have given us their view on the additional representation raised. But I would like to actually refer to concerns raised by one particular representation that was sent in about incorrect information in terms of the layout of their property and which way the sun sets and which way the sun doesn't set, and their belief that the current daylight and sunlight studies are incorrect because of the layout and because of the way the reality is the sun sets in a totally different way. And this has sort of flagged up concerns about the, I won't say validity of the data, but concerns about how accurate the data is. And could there be some misunderstandings on particular layouts of properties? And I would therefore, given that the officer in his summary on the addendum is completely silent, he just says that the daylight and sunlight studies were carried out and therefore that is it. He doesn't address the representation's comments that the floor plan is incorrect and therefore the data is being carried out on incorrect information. And therefore I'm actually going to ask whether or not we can defer today to ask the applicant to revisit these daylight and sunlight figures to ensure they are absolutely correct, because I am concerned that we could be taking a decision. This is an iconic site. It's a very important development. It will bring a lot of office workers into the city, office space. And it's really important that we take the decision based on the correct information. And therefore, I would propose the motion that we actually defer it today to just double check to ensure that there's no mistakes have been taken, because this is having an impact on residents if it's incorrect. And if we make the wrong decision, this building is going to be up there for decades. So I want to be totally assured that everything is squeaky clean and tip-top and everything is correct. And therefore, I would propose that motion, Chair. I don't know.
Thank you, Marianne. That is very clear. In a moment, I'll ask officers to address that. What I would say is you raised two issues. One is around timing of papers and paperwork. I think we note that. There is a high volume. It doesn't help that we actually permit late submissions, which is kind of us gold-plating national requirements, including, I think, we had several come in quite late last night, and thank you to town clerks for processing them. On the accuracy point, I don't think that is sufficient grounds for a deferral, in my view. I think everyone's here. I think we have the papers. I think... Sorry, if I could ask members of the public not to catcall from the back of the room, that would be polite, if you wouldn't mind. I don't personally think there is, but you have proposed a motion. If that's seconded, we can debate it. I think ultimately the robustness of the papers is strong, and it would perhaps be a future potential judicial review that would look into that, and that's not for us to decide now, but I mean, my sense is the papers are in good enough shape for us to make a well-informed and balanced determination today. Perhaps, Gwyn, you would just like to add something.
Chairman, I'm very, very confident that the accuracy of the papers before you allow you to make an informed decision.
Thank you. Does anyone wish to second Marianne's motion for a deferral now? Liz King. Okay, we now have a debate. Does anyone wish to say something on the deferral motion? I don't see any appetite. Therefore, I'm going to ask for a vote on whether we should be deferring the application as per Marianne's request. All those in favour, please raise your hand.
I count 8.
That's 8. All those against?
Count 14.
That's 14, and abstentions.
Count 3.
3. So the motion is not carried. Moving on to item 4. I will just outline the process we will follow, which is the standard process, but we have new members. And by the way, I forgot to welcome Keith Bottomley, Sheriff Keith Bottomley, back to the committee. Keith, you're very welcome indeed as well. First of all, there will be an officer presentation. The case officer Anastasia will present to the room. Following that, objectors will address the meeting. There is a chance for us to ask them questions to clarify anything they may have said that we wish to ask more about. Then supporters and applicants will address the meeting, and again, you have a chance for questions. We then have one elected member from the ward of Cripplegate Jackie Webster, who will address the committee in her capacity as a ward member. And then finally, there'll be a chance for you to ask questions of our officers regarding their report before we move to a general debate and then a vote on the application. Town Clerk.
Thank you. So item 4 concerns a phased development proposal involving demolition of the existing buildings, partial retention of the basement, including a new mezzanine, and construction of a new building comprising a basement, ground floor, 20 upper stories, and roof plant. The proposed uses include office space, flexible office and community space, flexible culture and event space, and flexible retail, service, food and beverage space. The scheme also includes new public realm and pedestrian routes at ground level, hard and soft landscaping, pedestrian and vehicle access, blue badge parking and cycle parking, servicing, plant and other back-of-house space, excavation for an attenuation tank beneath the existing basement slab, external alterations and demolition to the south elevation of the adjoining Porter Tun Room of the former Whitbread Brewery, together with the associated highway and enabling works. Item 4 also concerns a list of building consent for external elevation to the south elevation of the Porter Tun Room of the former Whitbread Brewery in connection with the development at 1 Silk Street, including demolition of the brick casing and removal of services and event belonging to 1 Silk Street, fixed against the brewery building elevation, including making good of any existing brickwork. The recommendations can be found in full on page 68 of the main agenda pack. You should have received a main agenda pack, an information pack, a presentation pack, 5 comments packs, 1 addendum pack, and second addendum pack first thing this morning. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Town Clerk. Okay, Anastasia Tamparidou, who is the case officer, will be presenting. Can I just check first, can committee members all see the screens okay? Making sure there's no impairments. That looks good. Anastasia, over to you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, members of the committee. This presentation is a condensed version of the longer presentation circulated to members alongside the officer's report. I will try to be as brief as possible today, but there is a series of matters to be covered in today's presentation. So to begin, the application site is outlined in red and comprises the existing building at 1 Silk Street, which is bounded by Silk Street to the south and west and Milton Street to the east. The site lies in the northern part of the city, close to the boundary with the London Borough of Islington. The surrounding areas varied in scale, with taller buildings such as the City Point, Cromwell Tower, and the Heron sitting in close proximity to the site. To the north, the townscape transitions to a lower-rise historic scale. To the south is the Barbican estate which forms a strong and distinctive presence. The existing buildings on site were originally built in 1980 and refurbished in late 90s. They comprise 2 interconnected buildings operating as one with shared podium-level amenities, providing approximately 60,000 square meters of office floor space along their entirety. Images provided here show the site's frontage. As seen, the existing building has a defensive and inward-facing street-level presence with no active ground floor uses or pedestrian permeability. And here are images of the existing building from the Barbican podium levels. Annotations here provided for reference in terms of the heights of the buildings. In terms of the eastern half of the site, annotated as Milton House on this image, it is considered to be a tall building under the provisions of the adopted and emerging policy context. The area is mixed use with residential or short-term accommodation in the site's immediate surroundings, with Whitbread Brewery to the north, the Guildhall School of Music and Drama is to the west of the site, and the Barbican Arts Centre to the southwest. The existing site is not located within a conservation area. As shown on the slide, the Barbican conservation areas, the Grade 2 listed Barbican Estate, and the Grade 2 star Barbican Register Park and Gardens sit opposite west and south of the site. The Brewery conservation area and the Grade 2 and Grade 2 star listed building are directly north of the site. A minor part of the proposals would fall within the Brewery conservation area as a result of a small area of oversale along its boundary to the north. As part of the proposals, listed building consent is sought for the demolition of this brick-clad vent, which is attached to the brewery. It encases ventilation and plant equipment associated with the existing 1 Silk Street building. It does not form part of the special interest of the brewery, and it is an entirely modern structure. Its removal is acceptable in design and heritage terms. The site is well served by public transport, with the nearest stations shown on this map, including Moorgate and the Liverpool Street Station towards the east, the Barbican and Farringdon stations towards the west side, offering underground and national rail connections. So the application proposes a phased development comprising the demolition of the existing building and the construction of an office-led mixed-use development with complementary ground floor uses and new public spaces. The proposals comprise of 3 building forms, including a Part 16 and a Part 20-story structure, with a lower-scale annex building to the northwest side of the site. Here are the existing and proposed south elevations. The existing plan on the left has a grayed out area which shows the massing, which is set away from the south elevation and wraps around the northern boundary of the site. On the right-hand side of the existing elevation, you can see the part of the existing building which is defined as a tall building, and it is over 75 meters tall. Here you can see the proposed south elevation with the existing building outlined in blue and annotated distances from the surrounding buildings. The application seeks to increase the mass by approximately 50 meters in height, which would define the proposal as a tall building under the adopted and emerging policy context. The existing west elevation is 19 meters from Cromwell Tower, which would increase to 28 meters in the proposed elevation, creating an opportunity for an open sky public space at ground level. The increased massing would deliver an overall floor space uplift of approximately 57% on site, predominantly from infilling the existing building's voids. As discussed previously, the existing ground floor lacks active frontages and pedestrian routes. In contrast, the proposed ground floor would be designed to increase pedestrian permeability and active uses to the street scene. Specifically, and as shown on this plan, it would include the following elements: a new pedestrian route through the site from east to west, also called the Ropemaker Arcade, a new public open space to the west of the proposed building, which is created by the setting back of the proposed western elevation. This is also called the Civic Plaza, flexible retail units of over 1,000 square meters, an annex building to the north of the Civic Plaza, which would provide cultural event space along its ground and lower ground levels, a flexible office community unit opposite the cultural space, a centralized office lobby with entrances from the public route and south of the Silk Street side, a loading bay located to the eastern part of the ground floor with access from Milton Street. In total, the proposal delivers over 1,200 square meters of public realm, representing a significant increase on the existing provision. This would enhance the pedestrian movement through and around this large urban block, considered to be a key benefit of this scheme. The proposed ground floor uses have been assessed on their merits and are considered to be acceptable. Restrictions to the hours of operation to the retail, cultural, and community uses, as well as to the level of noise emitted from the ground level activity, would be controlled by planning conditions and Section 106 obligation management plans recommended in consultation with environmental health officers. These images demonstrate how the setback of the building allows for the creation of the new Civic Plaza at the western end of the site. This space would be framed by retail units and the cultural space at the ground level of the annex building and would feature planting and opportunities for sitting. This provision is considered a key benefit of the scheme, as it would activate and animate this part of Silk Street in a way that the existing building does not. The space has been designed as a gateway to the Barbican Centre, and uses within it would be mutually supportive of the Barbican as a destination. Moving on, the Ropemaker Arcade aims to create a micro-destination to serve local workers, residents, and visitors of the area and of the Barbican Centre. This route would strengthen wider links between Liverpool Street and Moorgate to the east and Farringdon to the west, while also providing connections between Whitecross Street Market to the north and the Barbican Centre entrance to the southwest. Public art would feature along its length, providing added activity and vibrancy alongside the retail units and the open spaces to be created. So overall, the new cultural offer has been developed with consultants in the cultural sector through early consultation and engagement with key stakeholders, and would align with the destination city agenda. This would include a total space of over 1,400 square meters intended for a performance operation, offering space for rehearsals and performances, as well as opportunities for public access and public toilet facilities. an over 200 square meter space intended for community operations such as podcast and creative studios, just opposite of the culture space, and the integration of public art along the new public spaces. Both the culture and the flexible community floor space would have a peppercorn rent, a fair and reasonable service charge, and the fit-out costs for these spaces would be covered by the building owner. The details, including the final operators and management of this offer, would be secured under Section 106 agreement, and as such, this offer is considered to be acceptable. The building would be served via an on-site internal servicing yard. In the same area, an accessible car parking space would be provided. Compared to the existing unregulated arrangements, servicing vehicle trips would be capped to 50 trips per day, including at least 50% consolidation, a reduction of more than half of the existing trips to the site. This would also be restricted to take place outside of the city's peak periods, with no deliveries taking place overnight or on Sunday and bank holidays. The strategy and proposed arrangements are considered acceptable and would be subject to management under Section 106 obligations and planning conditions. Regarding cycle parking, facilities are proposed over the ground and lower levels of the building. The proposed long-stay provision for the non-office elements is London Plan compliant. However, it does fall short in office long-stay provision. This has been justified given the constraints of the site and on the basis that the provision meets the minimum number of spaces when calculated against the proposed net internal area. This provision has been found acceptable by both officers and the TfL. The proposal is expected to generate additional pedestrian movements, particularly along Ropemaker Arcade and parts of Silk Street. As shown on this diagram, the majority of the office arrivals would be expected from within the public route, where the main office entrance would be located. This slide shows the summary results of the AM and PM peak hours, highlighting the forecast growth in pedestrian movement on Ropemaker Street and the new arcade. The pedestrian comfort level assessment shows that almost all locations would meet or exceed the PCL targets during peak hours, which is generally consistent with the existing situation. As part of the scheme, officers have negotiated 278 highway works, aligning with the local healthy streets plan and including improvement to the public highway and landscaping elements to enhance the public realm and the overall pedestrian experience. It is also noted that sections of the highway within Silk Street would need to be stopped up and private areas to be adopted, resulting in circa 20 square meters of net gain. Now turning to the building above, the proposed building comprises of rectangular stack forms with cut corners, creating recessed space for outdoor amenity. The facades of the main building integrate external fins, which act as a privacy mitigation to direct views away from the neighboring buildings. These features change color as one moves around the building, providing animation and visual interest to the elevations. The architectural approach responds to context, heritage, and environmental considerations through a careful articulated form, facade, and massing strategy, while optimizing site capacity to deliver significant office floor space in line with strategic objectives. This slide shows the typical office layout throughout the building, which offer larger floor plates designed to support a range of tenants with options for interior and exterior amenity. The proposal seeks to provide over 85,000 square meters of best-in-class Grade A office floor space. This would be an almost 25,000 square meters or 43% increase over the existing provision, and it is considered a significant contribution to the city's strategic economic function and in line with the strategic objectives of the adopted and emerging policies. The building would offer opportunities for private outdoor amenity spaces. This plan shows level 17, which is a communal roof terrace, and the current terraces below. These terraces would be subject to conditions regarding hours of use to safeguard the residential amenity, suicide prevention, lighting, landscaping, and design. It is worth noting that the proposal has undergone significant revisions during the planning application process, following the original submission in response to consultation. These changes include the reduction in the height of the proposed western building structure by approximately 10 meters in response to daylight, sunlight, and heritage impacts, an increase in the annex building height by an additional story, other facade changes including fins and additional treatment to mitigate overlooking. The revised scheme shown to the right forms the scheme before you today. The proposed facade seeks to reduce the glazing ratios in order to minimize overlooking and light spill where possible. This is strengthened by the angle of the external fins changing direction to direct views out to less sensitive areas, and in the case of the chamfered corners of the proposed building, this would feature obscure glass, which has been introduced in the revised scheme in response to consultation. It is therefore considered that the proposal safeguards neighbouring amenity at an appropriate level for a dense and urban context and considering the existing and established building relationships. In terms of the annex building, this has undergone changes to respond better to the brewery building next door, with larger openings provided at ground floor for the cultural use. The sculpted profile of the facade base provides visual interest and contrast to the primary building. Moving into the environmental impact assessments, the site is located close to a number of open spaces, residential and other sensitive properties. The application is supported by daylight, sunlight, and overshadowing, as well as a solar glare and light trespass assessments as part of the submitted environmental statement, reviewed by both offices and BRE as an independent third party. In terms of overshadowing, private open areas have been assessed with moderate and minor adverse impact, which has been concluded to be acceptable in the office's report. In terms of solar glare and light trespass assessments, both conclude in no significant effect and as such considered to be acceptable. It is noted that a substantial number of objections have been received, raising concerns on the loss of light received by the existing residential properties in the immediate surroundings. While some properties, including the Heron, Speed House, and Cromwell Tower, which you see on this slide, as well as other receptors, would experience impacts beyond BRE guideline levels in certain cases, these are considered typical for a dense urban context. For the aforementioned properties in particular, any reasonable increase in massing on the site is likely to result in some impact given the existing low daylight levels due to window orientation and balcony arrangements. The amendments introduced to the scheme sought to address these impacts, and this is demonstrated as shown on the vertical sky component mapping for Cromwell Tower on this slide. These impacts are fully acknowledged and are considered acceptable for this context. Similarly, for Speed House, as diagrams show here, while reductions are noted and acknowledged, the impact is considered proportionate for the existing conditions and appropriate for the surrounding urban context. In line with guidance, wind has been assessed as part of the environmental statement, which has been third-party reviewed. In all configurations tested, the proposed development with the proposed landscaping does not result in any safety exceedances, and conditions would generally be acceptable for their intended use or consistent with the existing baseline and therefore acceptable. Thermal comfort has also been assessed and is considered to be acceptable as well. As required, the applicant undertook an early and rigorous carbon optioneering study, which has been independently reviewed. Option 5A, shown on this diagram, is the approach taken forward for this application. The scheme is designed to high sustainability standards, reducing embodied carbon, improving energy efficiency, and allowing for future adaptability. It also incorporates amenity space, urban greening, and biodiversity, with circular economy principles embedded throughout. The applicant has also agreed to support expansion of the local heat network by exporting surplus cooling from the building system, which is a provision that is considered to be a key benefit and would be secured through the Section 106 agreement. As such, the scheme is acceptable in sustainability terms. I will now briefly run through a selection of verified views, starting with the local views around Silk Street and the Milton Street. The view here shows the existing building next to the high-rise buildings of the City Point and the Heron. It indicates the lack of activation and pedestrian permeability on the existing situation. The proposals would activate the street scenery and increase greening as shown on this proposed verified view. This is an existing view looking north with the application site so to the right adjacent to the Cromwell Tower. And the proposed view, the building here steps back, allowing it for the creation of the civic plaza and improving the relationship with the street. Existing view looking north along Milton Street, showing the existing servicing arrangements and with the proposed development in place. Looking west as existing and as proposed with Shakespeare Tower showing in the background. This is a view taken from Milton Court, looking west, showing the existing building next to the brewery. And in the proposed view here, you can see the new public route being created. Moving into further views, this one is taken from Whitecross Street with the building on the side showing at the background next to Cromwell and with the proposed building in place. These views show the building in the immediate context, and the annex building is becoming more visible in these closer views. This view is from Chiswell Street, showing the existing building behind the brewery and the proposed building. In the cumulative scenario, the proposed development, which is shown here, the proposed development is partially screened by the consented extension to the brewery. And a view from the northeast part of Chiswell, as proposed and cumulative.
Sorry, can I please ask members of the public to try and do their very best to remain silent? I know emotions are high and it's a hot room, but this is a public meeting, but it's not a bar brawl. Anastasia, please continue.
Thank you. A view from within the brewery's courtyard as existing and with a proposal in place. Here is a view from the wall-side high walk, showing the St. Giles Terrace, and with a proposed building in the context of the two tall buildings at either side. From Andrews Walk, a high walk, the existing building is visible above the roof of Speed House and next to Cromwell Tower, and with the proposed building in place. Similarly, from Willoughby High Walk, the existing building is visible above the roof of Speed House and next to Cromwell Tower, and the proposed building in place. I will now run through LVMF views from Hungerford Bridge. Showing here is the viewpoint 17B2, and the telephoto is to the right. As you can see, the existing site is not visible from this view. This is the same view showing the previous proposal next to the spire of St. Bride's, and the currently proposed scheme, which would no longer appear behind the spire of St. Bride's from this part of the protected view. And moving to LVMF viewpoint B1, 17B1, again, none of the existing building is visible. Previously proposal sat behind the spire of St. Bride's, and with a revised proposal which is slightly pulled in and lowered behind the spire. Members, as set out in the office's report, the proposed development would result in a number of identified impacts, all of which are afforded weight in the planning balance. With regard to heritage, this includes low levels of less than substantial harm to a number of designated heritage assets. The proposals would optimize the site's capacity for growth and deliver a significant amount of floor space, but in doing so would give rise to some conflict with heritage protected views and tall building policies. These impacts are of a low level of magnitude. However, the collective package of public benefits provides clear and convincing justification to outweigh the heritage harm identified. With regard to impacts on residential amenity, including daylight and sunlight to neighboring properties, these have been robustly assessed and are considered to be appropriate for this context. There is also a shortfall in the office long-stay cycle parking provision, resulting in partial conflict with London Plan Policy T5, which is fully justified in the office's report. The scheme delivers a significant quantum of high-quality, sustainable Grade A office floor space through the optimization of the site, supporting the city's strategic objective of economic growth and reinforcing its role as a leading global business center in a highly accessible location. In addition, the development would deliver new cultural and community space alongside extensive active ground floor uses, including retail, which would enhance the vitality of this area. The scheme would also create increased and improved public realm with integrated public art along the new spaces, which would increase pedestrian permeability and wayfinding through the site and deliver a more legible and accessible environment with acceptable pedestrian flows. Further benefits include highway and public realm improvements secured through the Section 278 agreement, provision for future heat network expansion, and a comprehensive package of planning obligations secured through the Section 106 agreement. Taking all matters into account, in office's view, these benefits are clear and significant and outweigh the identified low level of less than substantial heritage harm as set out in the office's report. Accordingly, it is the view of officers that as the proposal complies with the development plan when considered as a whole, taking into account all material considerations, planning permission should be granted as set out in the recommendation and the schedules attached to the officer and addendum reports. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members.
Thank you very much, Anastasia. Now, colleagues, I'm sure you will have questions or officers which we will be able to ask in a little bit. Now we move on to the registered speaker section. We have equal time for objectors as we do for supporters and applicants. I have 3 objectors down to speak today. Robin Pembroke, Lawrence Quinn and Philip Katz. If, gentlemen, you could come to the lectern ready. And while you're doing that, I will just explain, in case it hadn't been explained, we have a traffic light system. The green light will come on when you start speaking, the red and green lights together when you have 30 seconds remaining, and then when the red light is on its own, that's the end of your time. Individually, you have up to 5 minutes, and collectively, you have up to 10 minutes. Hopefully that's clear. It's up to you which order you speak in. I will start the timer now.
Thank you. Last week, we presented this presentation, which I hope a number of you have got. We've got spare copies if you need it, where we presented to members of the committee the reasons why you should reject these proposals, because they are unnecessarily harmful. The balance of harms outweighs the benefits. It's a design that has been widely condemned by leading professionals. There is irreparable damage to many residents' lives in the Barbican and the Heron. And there's so many flaws in the data, so many flaws in the images and the process that's been followed here. Today we're going to summarise that presentation. We're also going to flag material issues, we think, from the Planning Officer's report and from the developer's presentation that's been published and their response to our presentation from yesterday.
It's the wrong building in the wrong place. The sheer scale and encroachment of overhangs are inconceivable around the tight streets of Silk Street and Milton Street.
So if we start by talking about why the harms outweigh the benefits, the key thing here is that these claimed but disputed benefits, such as that cultural offer, can all be delivered with a smaller, less damaging, less harmful building. A building 20% smaller than this in terms of square footage would still deliver 4.85% towards your 2040 goal. And that 20% reduction would dramatically reduce really material, severe harms to residents in terms of daylight, sunlight, overlooking and privacy. Let's look first at the harms around heritage.
So we believe this is an overdevelopment in the wrong place for a tall building, which has been dropped unashamedly into 3 conservation areas. The largest set of listed buildings in Grade 2 star listed gardens in the UK, the listed brewery, a tight network of already stressed streets, as well as been surrounded by residential buildings on all 4 sides. This is a disaster for our neighbourhood, as evidenced by nearly 1,500 concerned letters of objection. So last week, the developer showed you a set of misleading diagrams and images that claim proposals respect the proximity of other buildings. This is simply not true. We say this is an unruly neighbour, extending and encroaching on all sides unnecessarily, corners filling in the centre, adding an extra 5, 16 and 6 extra floors, and a massive uplift of 57%. It cantilevers across Silk Street by 7.5%, 7.5 metres rather, comes across Silk Street towards the Conservatory by 2.3, comes across the Speed House by 0.7, oversails opposite the Heron by 16, and comes out across the back of the brewery by 3.3. These are design decisions that we feel are needlessly harmful. Next slide, please, Ron.
Yep.
So this shows 14 metres from the entrance to the Barbican Centre, which again, we feel is just an encroachment too far. This could be avoided if the applicant had been open to listening to residents' concerns from the outset. We had said from the beginning a larger building could be placed here, but one that did not cause this level of gratuitous harm. So understanding the impact on heritage, the existing Trinity, if you put it on the next slide, we believe that the Trinity of Towers, the current building respects these. It steps down towards Cromwell Tower. The iconic views would be completely lost with this building. It destroys the Trinity of Towers, and the Trinity of Towers are rightly recognised by 2 of the city's SPDs, the listed management guidelines, and both the Barbican and Golden Lane conservation areas. Now, if you don't believe these images that we had to construct ourselves because one doesn't exist from the applicant, these are the verified views as you've just seen earlier. Existing and proposed, and Silk Street following. The loss of trees by this 0.7 metre overhang is inevitable. So this is gratuitous damage in our opinion. You would be approving these harms for what? We should be listening to the 1,500 objectors. Sir Kenneth Frampton, CBE, the most important historian of contemporary architecture in the world, gratuitous jukebox aesthetic. Yep. Amanda Levette, Stirling Prize-winning architect, that's completely inappropriate in scale and height for the setting of the Barbican. Rowan Moore in the Observer calls it joyless lumping and looming. We don't want to criticise this building, but this is the respected architectural community doing so.
Thanks, Lawrence. Turning to the lasting damages to residential amenity in terms of daylight, overlooking and noise disturbance. We believe if you approved these plans as they stand, it would be the biggest detrimental harm on residential amenity in terms of daylight and sunlight ever approved by the city. In Speed House, the Heron, Cromwell Tower and others, there would be 320 windows below building regulation guidelines. That's more than 100 homes that would see an up to 70% reduction in the daylight and sunlight. The developer has continued to misrepresent the data in their response to our presentation that they published 2 days ago by saying, oh, the actual change in light of under 3%, it would therefore be imperceptible in 84 of those flats. Let's have a look at one of those flats. So according to the schedule that is in the addendum that shows the visible skyline loss, this flat, which is flat 39, would lose less than 3%. Imperceptible. It's outrageous. The way that this data is being interpreted, it's a 3% absolute amount, it's a 56% relative reduction. The empty gesture that the developer made of just a 5% reduction in floor space benefited just a few flats in Cromwell. It made no difference to the Heron, it made no difference to Willoughby, it made things worse in Speed House because of this infilling. There's more harm than benefit. Your officers say on page 377 of the PDF that this would somehow be appropriate. That's a shocking statement from an organisation that has contractual obligations to its leaseholders. And please note the widespread issues from the Heron, Cromwell and Speed about inaccuracy of room use and lighting data, including even concerns about the as-is and to-be height relative to the Heron. Privacy, overlooking balconies, increased light pollution at night, and deliveries that would go on until 11 o'clock.
So finally, we have highlighted last week a wide range of data. It's a tall building, and the developer is also misleading you on how cramped it's going to be on Silk Street and Milton Street, using distorted images and making it look like a huge civic square. It's actually only 14 metres to the entrance to the Barbican and the podium edge. There's loss of existing trees on Silk Street. They've misled you on traffic forecasts. These are real people, real lives affected by the solely commercially driven effort to maximise the site for the owner at the expense of our heritage and the welfare of our community. But there's a better way. Our group has shown examples of London Wall West where civic interaction has led to a developer understanding what the neighbourhood needs. For example, London Wall West and the Richard Rogers building. We say with careful massing, civic-minded articulation and an understanding of the wider needs, responsible growth can coexist.
So we urge you to reject these proposals. The balance between harms and benefits is clearly wrong. Show us that you understand why this site should be precious to the city. Show us that you value the quality of life of your residents and the legacy you'll leave the city.
Shows you're willing to reject or change these proposals in a way that materially addresses the harm and balance presented today. It's a cultural location equivalent to the V&A of the Royal Opera House. These awful proposals were ever built, it would be for the sake of speculative office space. The balance is completely wrong. The proposals are needlessly harmful. We urge you to reject or change these plans.
Philip.
Thank you very much. Just for clarity, there's 1.5 minutes left, Mr.
Yes, I hope that didn't add to it.
No.
Thank you. My name is Philip Katz. My partner and I own 131 Cromwell Tower. I work in the city and my partner works from home. Our flat is referred to at chapter 15.280, that's page 435 of your section B pack, and at page 30 of the daylight and sunlight analysis. I would suggest the data is fake, and I do not share the confidence of your head of planning. I'm here to make two process points. The first is this. On the 24th of February, Mr. Tampuridou wrote to us that at the time of validating and advertising the application, the City of London provisionally considers that the application is for planning permission which does not accord with the development plan. The proposal is considered to affect the setting of one or more listed buildings and the character and appearance of one or more of the conservation areas. Well, a provisional view is provisional, but it gave comfort to us and other objectors, as did the personal view of the policy chairman of the City of London, Mr. Hayward, who told me to my face that he hoped the development would not get built as it was too massy. That's his word. Well, that was then. The planners have come to the opposite conclusion, and Mr. Hayward has, as he tells me, changed his mind. Well, nobody has written to us since. All we now have is over 600 pages, I think it's more now, published a week ago. It's unrelenting PR for the developers. It gaslights the affected residents, and Ms. Tampuridou hasn't even mentioned this change of view today. The only place you can find
your
it...
time, Mr. Katz. If you've got 5 words, you can finish.
Sorry?
If you have a couple of words, you can finish, but that is time.
Right. Well, if I'm only allowed that time, that's all I'll take. The report summary at page 67 of your pack, paragraph 15, XV Roman numerals, is all that is said about the planner's change of heart. This about face cannot credibly be attributed to the amended design, since that is not even mentioned. Your guess is as good as mine.
There we go. We need to cut it there, but thank you very much. I would just say, sir, referencing a private email from a councillor, in this case Mr. Hayward, who's not on this planning committee, is obviously your prerogative to do. I'm not entirely sure, A, it's particularly relevant, but B, certainly the only councillors that matter when it comes to the determination of this case are those sitting around the table today. It wasn't a question, sir. It was just a statement.
I won't be bullied.
No, sorry. You should know, of all the people, Mr. Katz, of all the people in the room, you should know, in these forums, you don't talk unless the chair asks you, and I didn't. So please, sir, if you have a question...
You have accused me of improper conduct.
I have not accused you. I was saying to my committee, sir, would you please not behave like this in a public meeting?
I'm sorry, I'm not to behave like this in a public meeting. You are bullying me and you're shutting me out. I'm joking.
Now... Okay, we'll move on. Now, of course, colleagues, you may have questions for Mr. Katz. My point was we heard from apparently a private email from Mr. Hayward, which is irrelevant to our determinations. You will have to make a consideration today based upon the facts in the papers before you. We've heard now from the objectors. It's an opportunity for colleagues to ask clarifying questions from those objectors. Okay, there being none, we're going to move on now. Oh, I beg your pardon. Liz King, I didn't see there.
Thank you. I have a few, I have a few questions for the objectors. In the packs that we have, the many of them, could you explain to me about the contested daylight impacts, including methodology, number of homes, impact of the gap, which I think you've addressed with this photo?
Yeah.
And the concept of perceptibility and BRE guidance. That's the first one. I have a couple. If you want to, do you want to take them all now?
I'll take that first.
Okay.
Thank you. Yes, so the point, I mean, there's so many points in terms of how the data has been contested, about the classifications of people's room usage, and the methodology that's been used and scope of the study. But I think the key point for Silk Street, and why this is so important, and if you visited this flat, you'll understand why, is when the developers said in their kind of rebuttal document back to us this week, they said, however, 84% of these windows, the actual change in light would be less than 3% and therefore imperceptible. The issue is that 3% is an absolute sum, not a relative sum. So for many of these flats in Speed House, they've only got 6% of visible skyline. So a loss of 3% is actually a 50% drop. That is illustrated in these flat-by-flat breakdowns. And it just shows that the developer has just kind of cherry-picked one piece of information and just not described it accurately to you. So that, and sorry, a really important point that I'd like to draw your attention to is that in our, we hired our own lighting consultants to challenge, and they raised a number of issues about the study. They noted that in BRE's own review of the 2026 GIA study, that they outline that the assertion that a 3% absolute change is not perceptible, has no basis in the BRE guidelines. And there is no further evidence in this context that this change would or would not be perceptible. So I think you can see that our lighting consultants are really challenging that use of the 3% figure.
Thank you. Liz, you have another question?
Yeah, I can, and just one thing, there's been a lot of contested distance to Speed House from the external fin glazing. Yeah. If you could talk about that real quick.
Yeah, so the problem started with this idea that the developer was using the glass line as the distance rather than the edge of the building. So that's the first issue. But the idea that they're not coming out towards Speed House by 0.7 metres is inarguable. So the idea of trying to present to the committee that these building lines are not encroaching any further than existing is patently incorrect. They're not respecting distances on any side of this proposal, and we've always said that, as Robin quite clearly outlined, by even taking 20% off of this building, you would still gain a huge amount towards the city plan, but these small encroachments all around here have a massive effect on real lives, massive effect on our streets, massive effect on proximities overlooking privacy and daylight. And we just feel these are needlessly harmful. And we've been saying that from the start when we took the development team into our flats in 2023, invited them in to illustrate how careful design could avoid this kind of reckless harm.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Philip Kelvin now. Colleagues, we will have a lot of questions throughout the proceedings, so if we can keep questions and answers as concise as we can. It's not an opportunity just to extend the general time. This is precise, concise questions on the matters at hand. Philip.
Thank you very much. I just have two fairly concise questions. The first one is on your, I think maybe one of your opening pages, and in the very helpful meeting you had with members prior, you said that there were 9,000 there were going to be 9,000 occupants of the building. I've heard elsewhere that it's 4,500, which is maybe a 10% or 15% increase on the existing. I know you use ChatGPT to generate the amount of people for your visual aid, but I would love for you to clarify on the number that. And if I just for simplicity and time, I'll just say this, the second question very simply as well. Thank you to those who enabled us to come on the site visit and in Speed House especially. We only saw one flat in Speed House. But I want to understand, are they bedrooms on that side, or actually, is that the living area? Because my understanding is the living areas point into the Barbican quad area, and actually is bedrooms on the side on this image that you have here. But
I think a lot of people use them for studies, is the brief answer to the second question.
Well, it's a simple question. They were designed as multifunctional rooms by the original architects, Chamberlain, Bond and Powell.
Yeah, and Frank.
On the question of the number of employees, which is a maximum capacity figure, you don't need to rely on ChatGPT. You can rely on the applicant's documents. All you've got to do is count up the number of desks that are shown in the loaded floor plans, and they are providing 8,500 long-stay cycle spaces as part of this application. So those ground the figures. The number of desks shown in the loaded floor plans in the applicant's documents, and the number of long-stay cycle spaces that will be provided in this scheme.
Thank you for that. Could I just ask you, let us know for the record your name, sir, so we know.
My name is Frank Davidson. I'm an architect. Unfortunately, I live opposite Milton Street, so I know it very well.
Thank you very much for that. Liz, I think you had another question.
And could you just detail the heritage impact on the listed building the buildings in the conservation areas, and how we weigh things like oversailing of the conservation area and the trees on Silk Street.
May I just interrupt? Because I think that sounds like a question for officers on the weighing of the heritage. But I think if you're okay, we can put that top of the list for officers. I think that's because they've done the weighing in the application. Thank you, Liz. Any more questions for objectors? Thank you, colleagues, very much. And thank you very much to our objectors for fielding all of those questions and for keeping to time. Now we're going to move to applicants and supporters. If you could all please come to the lectern. As a reminder, we have the traffic light system individually, maximum of 5, collectively maximum of 10. When the red and green are on together, you have 30 seconds. And just the red light is your time to stop talking. As you're moving to the microphone, I will introduce you. We have Gary Moore. You may want to say your role, Mr. Moore. We have developer Sir Stuart Lipton, and we have Jonathan Vaughan from the Guildhall School of Music and Drama. I think we're ready to go, so over to you.
Are we on? Cool. Chair, Alderman members, firstly, good morning. And thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today on the proposal for 1 Silk Street. My name is Gary Moore. I'm a fund manager at LaSalle Investment Management, and we're responsible for P&B's office interests here in London, and in particular in the city. Bit of background on P&B. They are a Malaysian investor. They got a huge affection and affinity for the UK, really based on their history, obviously part of the British Commonwealth. They love the British way of life. They're huge investors in central London, along with a sister company called EPF. And they love the British way of life. They're very supportive of London. They're very supportive of offices. And also they're very supportive of the city. They've even bought their own office to occupy, which shows how supportive they are. P&B bought various London assets going back to 2012. And I think this is an important point. Some of the message you may have heard is they're not short-term owners. They're not just here trying to get a building, flip it, develop it, make profit. They're not here for that. They are long-term owners of real estate. And the desire is to maintain ownership of this site for a very long time. That's from where we are today. If you look at the site today, we've got a vacant building. It's at the end of its economic life. Linklaters, the tenants, have moved around the corner. And P&B have got a strong belief in the city and want to maintain this longer-term ownership. And I think aligned with the city's aspirations, we've got a superb opportunity to help you to deliver on your growth agenda and your investment in the Elizabeth line, and also to reimagine that public realm at the entrance to the building and the entrance to the Barbican. So it's almost a new front door for the Barbican Centre. And it's a major growth opportunity for the city in that corridor. We have another interest at 1 Exchange Square behind Liverpool Street, which you kindly gave consent for 3 years ago. I'd encourage you to go and look at that. We've invested in the Pocket Park there, spent millions, regenerated that area considerably, wonderful building, completing now. We can do the same here at Silk Street. You know, we're very much into the public realm and what we can do in the neighbourhood, and that's an important part of us. In addition to that, culture forms an important part of this building, you'll hear shortly. And I think along with the new space for creatives and startups, that's hugely exciting to create that space in this part of the city, aligned with the neighbouring occupiers. A couple of points about us as LaSalle and P&B. I want to talk about social value. A lot of people ignore that. People just think, oh, it's a fly-by-night thing. It's important to me personally, and it's important to my clients. At our other projects, we've delivered social value through, we got 46 new starters to the job market. That's way ahead of the minimum requirements of 35. We've got 32 work experience placements to date. And a very important part to me personally, 7 of those is through neurodivergent organisations. And I think that's a really important point, and that exceeds the minimum requirements. And also 16% of project values to local SMEs. We're supporting local businesses. And this is something we're going to go above and beyond at Silk Street. We can create new jobs, new employment, new training enterprise. And we go way above the policy requirements of the city, because that's something that we hold as a true value to us. We've assembled a first-class team here. You've seen a lot of the project pack. We've got Sir Stuart Lipton to my right of LRD. We've got SOM Architects, and we've got DP9. But before I hand over to Stuart, I just want to make one final point. A lot of schemes that are consented in the city are not funded. for various reasons. We have a client that's committed to Central London. We have a client committed to the city. They've been committed since 2012. They've been committed for a long-term period. We are fully funded. We have the ability to start this project tomorrow. We've got the desire to do it. We've got the funding to do it. It's not going to sit there as a stranded site doing nothing or a vacant site. We are ready to go, obviously subject to your approval. So thank you for your time, and I'm going to hand over to Sir Stuart.
Good morning, Chairman, Aldermen, members. Firstly, we stand by our application. We stand by the detail. We stand by the forensic nature of looking at every aspect, as we've always done in the city. My colleagues and I have built 42 buildings in this wonderful city. We understand it, we live it, we try and understand other people's goals. But you will know some of our projects, Broadgate, Paternoster, 22 Bishopsgate, they demonstrate physically the quality to which we aspire. And each new building takes us on to new understandings of residents, of people, of visitors, and of the extraordinary nature of the City of London. And we spent 3 years with our team verifying all of the information that we have presented. So it's important to us that it's right. And 30 years or more of building buildings, we have never had an objection that we have done anything, not one single refusal, not one single point of error. We stand by what we say. Looking at the project more broadly, our building, I think, is a good neighbour. It complements the Barbican, recognised by Historic England as an important part of England's architectural history. And a brutalist masterpiece, its confident, ambitious architecture. Its robust character deserves a neighbour of serious equality. A timid or apologetic building would not do justice to the Barbican's strength. We propose a contemporary building which respects its scale, roots, material character, and public role. Now, contrast is important. Where the Barbican is heavy, the new building is lighter. Where it's inward-looking, ours is open, helping to clarify and celebrate the Barbican's uniqueness. Our building will be welcome and active, with public uses, amenities, small shops not to be found anywhere else, art, even public toilets. I know everybody has quite rightly a focus on them. And a new, more vibrant route to Liverpool Street. So we feel that we're supporting this cultural quarter. We love culture, we're involved in it. And of course, in this neighbourhood, the corporation has invested heavily in the London Museum, the Elizabeth Line, the Barbican Centre, and Smithfield of the future. But our goal is to ensure Silk Street continues to be a quiet street. We'll reduce the number of deliveries. We can give you emphatic detail on the reduction achieved at 22 Bishopsgate, where deliveries were down 80% or more. Pedestrian movement essentially will go through our new street with an internal office entrance. Now, if anybody wants to talk about office numbers, I think we're reasonably qualified. Our estimate, based on expertise and more than 10 million square feet, is that this building will have about 4,000 to 5,000 people at any one time. Life has changed after the pandemic. Happy to take questions afterwards. So, if you're minded to approve this, as Gary has said, we'd like to move on quickly. But the real focus for us that development is never simple. It is about history, neighbours, civic life, business and legacy. We approach that with responsibility, care, ambition, and a passion to deliver buildings of excellence and innovation. If you are so minded, we will deliver that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just confirming time. Just over a minute and a half for you, Jonathan.
Thank you. As members know, the Guildhall School of Music and Drama was founded by the city in 1880. We have many famous alumni. We offer bachelor, master's and doctoral programs, but less well known is our 4,000 children between the age of 4 and 18 who come to us every week on Saturdays across 6 centres around the British Isles. 40% of these children are from global majority backgrounds and 30% are on bursaries. This is an important showcase for them. We're chronically short of space and opportunities in the city are rare. This will give us the opportunity to showcase teaching, rehearsal, performance and community art capacity. It will provide a competitive edge 21st century performing arts training in an ever-demanding marketplace, currently worth 19 million of student fees alone for us. We are pleased to be the preferred cultural operator. We've been working closely with Lipton Rogers. This will enable us to expand our student artist and community work. We're working with Blair Parkin, who is the brains behind the Eden project, to look at how this could be a porous hub to the pavement with QR codes that would allow for real-time experience of audio through sound, windows into the performance space, porous community access.
We're hitting time. You can just finish the statement.
Broadcast facilities. We're looking at the light room to make sure this is a state-of-the-art technology going forwards. It's a huge opportunity and asset for the school.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. And again, I'm sure colleagues may well have questions for you on that cultural use that the Guildhall School are hoping to take up. Okay, I saw lots of hands flourishes. I'm just going to add them onto the list. Okay, fine. I think I'm going to take them in the order I saw them. It's not a short list. Sheriff Keith Bottomley.
Chair, thank you very much. There's clearly some disagreement about the daylight and sunlight studies. Could you just explain to us the steps you took to understand the internal room layouts in the properties? How does the impact compare to other major developments in central London? And how early in the design process did you consider daylighting of neighbouring residents' properties?
And I guess as the different members of the applicant team, you're welcome to answer questions. You just introduce yourself if you haven't yet spoken, please. Thank you.
Hi, Molly Moritzi, GIA Daylight and Sunlight. So in terms of these steps to ensure that we had accurate layouts, the first thing we did was to look at floor plans available online. We were able to obtain floor plans of the Heron, Cromwell Tower and Speed House. Subsequent to the September submission, we were then able to access Cromwell Tower and Speed House. We got access to 26 flats in Speed House and 20 flats in Cromwell Tower. We updated the layouts to reflect that information. It verified the majority of the layouts we previously had, but where they were different, we updated it. So this was a very extensive assessment to ensure that we had as much accurate information as possible on the internal layouts of the neighbouring properties. Has that fully addressed?
Yeah, just how does it compare to other similar situations in central London?
In terms of the daylight and sunlight retained values, they are very similar to other urban locations across the City of London. The changes in daylight are very similar actually to areas that are less dense than the City of London as well. So this is very comparable in both retained values and in terms of impact.
Thank you very much. I have Oliver Sells, KC.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I want to ask you about the question of the measures that you may have taken to mitigate the potential damage to the views of the residential properties, which is plainly an issue. Could you help on relation to that, please?
Is the views into the properties?
Yes.
Right, thank you. So mitigations of views into the properties from the proposed building.
Peter Jackson from SOM with the architects for the design work that you've seen presented today. Throughout our design proposals, we've sought to understand the many drivers that impact design on this site. We've started from a local condition and considered the wider impacts as a secondary input. So always we've been understanding from the opportunities we've had to enter residence flats early on as the residents have raised, as a critical need. And we've heard noise problems, we've heard daylight and sunlight, we've also heard views. And in responding to those issues, you will see, and some of the overlay drawings that you've been presented with today highlight the point very, very clearly, that we've pulled back in many locations from adjoining residents. So if I take that factually, we're about 8 metres away from Cromwell House, further than we are to Cromwell Tower, further than we are today. We project slightly further towards the conservatory, but we've done the light studies to demonstrate that there's no impact on that as an arboretum and an important space. We do project ever so slightly further forward to Speed House. The dimension that you've heard is 0.7 metres. We reflect that we bring the glass line further forward by 0.2 metres, 200 millimetres, because that's how one perceives privacy, and privacy is one of the equal drivers there. So view and privacy being balanced there together. We're a metre further away from the Heron Tower. So we have really sought to address those issues. We have looked to fill in the central courtyard of the space in the building because the larger floor plates are how we respond to occupier demand. But those things are part of responding to city policy, which has an equal balance here. And finally, just in terms of how the overall dimensions of the buildings work, on the northwest side of the building, we've pulled back by 8 metres from the existing building line, so that we've actually improved views from the Type 1 apartments in Cromwell Tower, which are those in closest proximity.
Thank you. I think you answered more than one question there, but I admire your ambition. Next question is from Shravan Joshi.
Thank you, Chair. I think we're essentially asking about impacts from the scheme on residents in the surrounding area. Can you just talk me through the assessments you've done and the changes you've made from the original submissions you'd made to where you've got to today, to what's in front of us? Because there are representations we've received that suggest that actually those impacts have increased from the original to what we've seen today. Can you just talk us through that journey and why you feel this is now the least impactful scheme in front of us today? Thank you.
I'm going to ask two of my colleagues to join me. Firstly, we have been forensic.
You might want to get to the microphone, Sister.
Sorry. Firstly, we've been forensic in the points you make. We have examined, as you've heard from Molly, every detail here. But let me ask my colleagues to.
Certainly. In terms of the changes we made through the design process and in the addendum submission that we made in February, the understanding that we had set out with, as I said, was that local arrangements, local relationships were critical to how we responded on this site. The views that we had adopted and understood of St Bride's Church, we felt that we had made a very, very balanced proposition which addressed daylight, resident amenity, addressed those long views. It was very clear from the proposals that came back, or the responses that came back, that those two things needed further consideration. And we have pulled further away from the surrounding buildings, particularly Cromwell Tower. We've reduced height on the western building, which has benefits to St Bride's, the long views. We have sought to recover some of that mass, and we've reduced slightly the dimension between the two buildings, the two elements of the building, to tighten that up and recover some area, so that we have not lost area because we're driven by policy to optimise efficiency on the site. Okay?
So in terms of how that has affected the neighbours, it has created significant improvements on Cromwell Tower. The number of windows that see significant losses has more than halved, and the number of flats that see impact has also reduced. In terms of the wider properties, because there is a reduction on the west block, There are some very, very isolated small improvements in a number of the other properties. They were so small that we didn't feel that it was representative to say they were improvements. In the same way for Speed House, there has been some very, very, very small slight shifts that are worth. We're talking about decimal points here, not material changes. So where it was slightly greater or slightly worse, but not material, we didn't focus on it. We focused on the main improvement, which was to Cromwell Tower as a result of the changes.
Thank you. Again, just as I said this earlier, same principle applies to questions and answers. If we can do our best to be concise, that would be great. Edward Lord.
Chair, thank you very much. In this vast volume of comments we received, there were quite a lot about trips and movements to and from the building. Can you possibly elaborate on how you have considered this in the trip generation assessment? Thank you.
Martin Reed from Arup Transport Consultants. The trip generation was calculated on looking at the existing trip generation, the proposed trip generation, and the net change. The existing trip generation assessed the permitted development and what could be generated in a reasonable way by the existing site. The proposed trip generation was calculated based on a database called TRICS, T-R-I-C-S, which is the industry standard database for trips, and the net generation was calculated from that, and that was the net trip generation was the one that was assessed the impacts on the local streets and transport network.
Great, thank you very much.
If I might add,
yep.
With the corporation and offices at 22 Bishopsgate, we adopted an off-site consolidation plan, and that has reduced at 22 Bishopsgate to a handful of movements a day. Okay. We describe 50. We need to do that technically, but we would expect 20 perhaps, putting things in one white van rather than dozens of them, and organising that by electric vehicles from a central point is fantastically efficient, and the corporation has championed that.
Thank you. So just to recap, colleagues, I've got my list. Alistair Moss, Philip Kelvin, Alison Gowman, Tana Adkin. Anybody else that I should know about? Okay, yep. Liz, Dawn, Marianne. There we go. Okay, Alistair Moss.
Thank you, Chair. Can I ask about whole life carbon and sustainability? We've got in the reports, I'm sure, some very accurate but quite bland optioneering tables there. Can you try and bring that to life, please, as to what the thought process was in terms of demolition, partial refurbishment, etc. And also be interested to know, in terms of, there's obviously in this area a huge amount of embodied carbon investment already, as was mentioned actually I think by Sir Stewart, in terms of the Elizabeth line. We're in the middle of a dense urban location where that carbon needs to be put properly to use, and we've heard about how the site can be intensified. If you could cover that as well, because I don't think that's been really brought out. Thank you.
Good morning. Anna Kennedy, our Sustainability. Our process was following due diligence of City of London guidelines in whole life carbon optioneering. We followed those steps religiously. We had multiple pre-application meetings with the officers where we were bouncing back some ideas. For example, additional evaluation of residential option was as a result of those discussions. All of our analysis were third-party validated twice by Hilson Moran, who was actually an owner of the initial guidelines. So we followed them religiously. We also analyze alternative use, additional evaluation closer to the submission, just because there were some changes, and in response to City of London officers, we analysed that. So we followed the religious analysis. We analysed 5 versions of the building, and then alternative version of the last one, ranging from the minimum intervention to the maximum intervention. But because we analysed the building at the forefront through the number of surveys done by specialists, we realised that actually we are able to maintain the basement, so that accounts for circa 40% of the overall carbon in superstructure. So this is a significant saving, which takes us below the GLA guidelines at the moment.
Thank you. Next is Philip Kelvin.
Apologies, Chair. Could I just add a further response to the question from Councillor Moss? I'm Jonathan Smith from DP9, the Planning Consultants. I just wanted to add, in reference to the technical assessment on carbon, the way that we approach assessment of those options is in terms of the contribution that a site can make to the objectives of the city plan and the London plan. So as well as the carbon, we also look at the ability of various different options to contribute to public realm improvements, to cultural space, to create new office floor space. And that qualitative component is taken into account as we go through the process. So we undertake and we validate the technical process. We also then worked with officers to understand what the best overall solution is, carbon being one factor, but also the wider contribution to the city plan to arrive at our preferred option, which was the demolition and new build.
Great, thank you very much. Just a reminder to colleagues, if your question has already been asked, you're not under any obligation to still ask a question. Philip Kelvin.
Thank you very much, and thank you also for clarifying the occupancy number, which I've noted down as well, which is closer to 4,500. My specific question, and I will come on to this later with officers, but is related to the active travel zone assessment. So the Arab, might be the Arab people that want to stand up to answer this question, which is why was Moorgate Station excluded from the assessment done on the journeys to the site, and instead Liverpool Street, St Paul's, Barbican, tube stations. But the obvious one, the closest one, if you look on a map, the one actually the most impacted on Milton Court in your assessment of the both absolute increase and, the relative increase and the absolute numbers going through Milton Court, which I'll get to later with officers, that's where the highest footfall, because you rightly notice that it will come from Moorgate, yet you excluded it, my understanding, in pre-application from your active travel zone assessment. Why was that, please? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. The active travel zone is intended as through TfL's guidance to assess potential impacts on the public highway as part of discussions in relation to future public realm improvements. Milton Court is not part of the public highway. There are various routes for pedestrians that they could take through to get to Moorgate, and one of the routes that went to Liverpool Street, as you say, it doesn't go past or doesn't go directly to Moorgate, but it goes close to Moorgate, and it goes to Ropemaker Street. So what's missing essentially in, I think, the gap that we're referring to, the ATZ, by the way, was agreed between officers and with Transport for London, but the gap in theory, therefore, is Moorfields, and the route from Ropemaker Street down to Moorgate Station. The applicant team is already required as through a draft planning condition to provide a nighttime active travel zone assessment, and could include both for that and for the daytime the route between Ropemaker and Moorfields, which is a street with footways on both sides of the road and a lightly trafficked street as well.
Thank you. I have Alison Gelman.
Thank you, Chairman. The current building has been there 30 years, and you're building a new building. I want to ask how long you think your building's going to last. And I ask that in the context of the whole life carbon exercises on a 60-year building. And secondly, are you therefore future-proofing it? I maybe missed it, but I didn't see reference to the ability to link into the new proposed district heating system in the city. And I wondered if you could confirm that that is possible, so that you could have that as an alternative heating to your current proposed mainly air source heat pumps, I think. Thank you.
I will ask Arup to comment on the detail. I would just say to you that 1 Finsbury Avenue, built in 1984, refurbished at least 3 times, is absolutely up to standard and has another 50 years of life. So probably 100 years. Buildings are now being designed with materials and strategies to last. Not all of the building, The facade, for instance, may change according to newer technologies, but the substance of the building will last certainly 100 years.
Thank you. I think we probably don't need Arup for the detail. I think that was fairly well answered, Sir Stewart. Thank you.
District heating.
District heating. That will need an answer, sorry.
I'm afraid we don't have details on that. My colleagues is not present, but we certainly can come back to that.
I don't want to speak to the absolute numbers. Anna is correct that her colleague is not here, but we have made provision to connect to the future district heat network. We can benefit from it. We can also discharge additional heat to it. So we're ready to take full benefit of that as it comes online.
Thank you. Liz King.
Thank you. I have a few questions about the public realm. And thank you for sending through your presentation again, because that was the first time I ever saw the actual size of the public plaza, as you call it. Will the restaurants have any outdoor seating facing onto either the public plaza or onto Silk Street? Will the grab-and-go operations that we can see in the kiosk alley have any indoor seating to consume these grab-and-go things? And how wide is that, the kiosk alley? And what are the actual dimensions of the plaza? It says in your presentation that it's 4,000 extra square feet of space, plus that totals 7,000 in total. Now, 4,000, I mean, that's only 4 of my flats. It doesn't feel like a public plaza or civic plaza, as you call it. But that's what if you could tell us those figures, thank you.
Firstly, if I may say, we have built 10 public spaces in the city. There are 11. We have a passion for public space. As to your specific questions, yes, the restaurants will inevitably, people will take drinks, food out. Of course, they like it. A day like today, they want to enjoy the city. That's one of the changes. However, we want to control that noise. We want to control any litter. And if you go to any of the sites that we've done before, that's what you'll find. Meticulous attention to maintenance, but letting people have their freedom. So at least 50% of people in a building at lunchtime want to go out, enjoy the city, enjoy the civic benefits.
Thank you. Colleagues, just as a reminder, I'm going to move this on shortly, but I have some more hands. I would actually, as a former chair of the Barbican Arts Centre and co-chair of the Mayor of London's Cultural Leadership Board, I have an interest in culture, and I see, Jonathan, you're still on your feet, so thank you for standing there. Could you just talk a bit more about the cultural provision, particularly perhaps the kind of community outreach that you'll be planning to undertake?
Thank you, Chair. So the performance space, as I said, will be state-of-the-art, which will enable us to both broadcast around the world, but also to have porosity to the street with windows that can be blinded or not, and I mentioned QR codes for audio, listening to live performance. As far as our communities are concerned, we have, as I said, 4,000 children, many of them from underprivileged backgrounds. This will be a showcase centre in London for them to come and develop their work. Our production art team are already working on the technology that might go into the building, and we're looking at models like King's Cross Lightroom, as I mentioned, the Eden project, looking at pedagogy, education, ethical trade, all of those kinds of questions which are so pertinent to the world and through culture can be expressed in very particular ways. So I think this is an enormous opportunity for the school. If you look at the Barbican spaces and the Guildhall performance venues, all of them are close to the street. They're behind very high walls. This would be absolutely porous, both to the local community and to the world as a broadcast centre.
Thank you. I have Tana Adkin.
Hello, yes. Question for Jonathan, I think it is. You referred to the importance of the Barbican and heritage, and you quoted historic England in your comments. Have you considered their objections to the planning application, and what did you think of their objections?
Just as a point of clarity, Historic England haven't objected to the application.
Oh, well, that's what it may help me then if that could be
Yeah,
clarified, because
we
I've
can-
got it
officers,
here.
I'll tell you what, we'll put that to officers. I suspect Mr. Nancolis will have an answer when we get to officer questions, because Historic England haven't objected to this.
Oh, well, that's what I've got written down here.
Ah.
So.
They have access.
In brief, Chairman, we have, of course, closely worked with Historic England.
Yes.
So there are no impacts on St Paul's. St Bride's you've heard about. We've been on the bridge looking at views of St Bride's. We've looked at views of the Barbican, importantly, its setting, our building. We have a particular, one of our consultants here who could talk about it in more detail. But as always, we're looking at the city as a place. How does it all fit together? Does it work together?
Yes. I mean, if I could just follow that up, please, Chair. My understanding was, if I've got it wrong, that Historic England were objecting. One of the things they raised was their issue was about the massing. And really what I was wanting to know was whether you'd spoken to Historic England about whether the mass problem, as I'm going to call it, could be reduced. I mean, it seems to be, there's so many good things about the plan. But was that discussion had with Historic England about reducing the mass?
We have had the discussions many times. There's always a debate of, essentially, though, what is the Barbican as it is? It's a big chap. It's very strong and powerful. And we have felt it appropriate in architectural terms to provide a building by SOM which is complementary, different. And if it was a small chap, it wouldn't stand out. And if I go to the wider issue here of the changing nature of this area, the Barbican Centre, I go often, it's a wonderful place. The London Museum will probably be an outstanding museum. What's coming on in Smithfield, this is an area of great investment by the corporation. It's passionate about its civic role.
So thank you, sorry.
I can't tell you,
Thank
I could
you.
talk for a long
Folks,
time.
I think I'm sensing we're coming to a kind of a natural end of the questions. I know there were some hands up. I would just encourage you, if you would like to rephrase it to the officers in the next session, that would be perfectly appropriate. I think our applicants have kindly been standing there for some time today, and I think it's been a good session too. I'm going to take a very brief 3-minute adjournment for those who need to go to the bathroom. In an orderly fashion. Okay, maybe slightly more than 3 minutes, Marianne. And we'll see you. But it's 5.
It's all right for you men.
I think we have to adjourn. Okay, if people could return to their seats, please, I would be very grateful. Just waiting for Liz. I think we're just waiting for a couple of members. Liz King is AWOL. I think, I'm just looking at the town clerk, we have everyone back. Thank you all for getting back to your seats in a timely fashion. I hope you're all suitably refreshed and so on. Okay, we are now at the point in the proceedings where you may have questions of officers regarding their presentation. Let me just keep your hands up so I can see them. Levan, Abby, Keith, Henry, Philip, Dom. Okay, I've got them. I'm going to start with Siobhan Joshi.
Sorry, Chairman. Thank you, Chair.
Sorry, I beg your pardon. I've messed up. This is actually the opportunity for Jackie Webster as the ward member. I have written down all the names, so I apologise, I skipped the item. Jackie, sorry to forget you there. You know the protocol. I think you've got up to 5 minutes. The same traffic light system applies. Over to you. Sorry.
Chair, members of the committee. My name is Jackie Webster. I'm a councillor for the Cripplegate ward, speaking on behalf of the community who will be directly affected by this proposal. I declare that I have a disclosable pecuniary interest in relation to this application and that I'm a leaseholder in the Barbican estate, as recorded on my register. I want to begin by acknowledging the community organising led by Robin, Jean-Marc and Lawrence, alongside the many residents who have opened their homes and given their time and energy over months and years. What they have demonstrated is resident engagement at its very best. People stepping forward not out of opposition to development, but because from very early on they believed this site could become something truly special for the city and for the iconic estate it sits alongside. Cripplegate is the most populated ward in the city, where many residents have extensive experience of living with ongoing development and construction. This community understands how spaces are used day to day and across the year, and how development can strengthen or weaken a neighbourhood. When this insight is included early on, it leads to more balanced and lasting outcomes. There has been consultation, and residents have engaged with it in good faith, attending meetings and providing feedback. But the key question is not whether consultation took place, but what difference it has made. From what residents have shared, it is not clear how their input has contributed to this outcome. Months of participation without impact. What they were asking for was a meaningful role in shaping their neighbourhood and in a scheme with the potential to have lasting impact on homes, communities, and the famous estate it sits alongside. What existed here was not opposition, but willingness to engage, to compromise, and to invest time and care in getting this right. There are strong local examples of this working well, such as the London Wall Place development, where constructive engagement helped shape an outstanding outcome, one that is valued and enjoyed by workers, residents, and visitors alike. Looking onto it, I'm reminded of how tall, substantial buildings can integrate so well with and even enhance a neighbourhood and its surrounding heritage aspects, and how well-designed public spaces can truly create places for everyone. An example of where qualitative stakeholder engagement led to multi-award-winning buildings, gardens, and public realm, and most of all, it connected communities. Communities were asking for that same approach here, that their willingness was met with engagement that would contribute to shaping the future of this neighbourhood. Through our work in resident engagement, it has been clear that the Cripplegate community has not resisted development. On the contrary, there has been a strong willingness to shape this scheme. It is disappointing and frustrating that in this instance, the views, insights and experience of the communities impacted have not been fully reflected in the evolution of this scheme so far. A missed opportunity that will have lasting impact. This leaves open a question about whether this proposal, as it currently stands, presents the best outcome we can achieve for this place of great importance and visibility. What is currently before us risks being a placeless proposal, without understanding of its context or community, and one that would come to dominate both. The result will be felt daily in the homes and lives of residents, as well as workers and visitors to this area. Yet there is an opportunity to shape a stronger, more responsive and more enduring development, one that supports well-being, enhances quality of life and is genuinely valued by those who live, work and spend time in this area. The prospect of lasting unnecessary harm to well-being and quality of life can be avoided through a scheme that embraces values, not just value. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for that. And I would, thank you. And as always, very well spoken and I think a balanced view that you took there. I would just remind members before we move to questions of officers, you probably already know this from your training, but the quality of a consultation process is not a material grounds for a refusal. It's background, it's interesting, but it's not grounds for a refusal. The quality of the consultation is not material. So I will now go on to the list, which I kept. It's fine, I don't think there are any. I'm going to go to the list, and I have, in fact, I'm going to bump Dawn up because you were on the last list to applicants and you didn't get to ask your question. So Dawn, why don't you go first? If you're ready, that is.
Thank you, Chair. If the assessment identifies a major glare impact, can officers state precisely where the major solar glare impact occurs, who it affects and why it is considered acceptable despite that classification, and why it does not require further design changes at this stage? Thank you.
Thank you.
For the question, so in the solar glare assessment, there's no significant impacts being identified. If that covers it.
There's none have been identified, did you say?
In terms of the solar glare assessment that has been carried out, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, that was concise. Well done. Siobhan Joshi.
Thank you, Chair. There were some quite serious assertions made by the representations for the objectors that we were working off false data, I quote, and that actually we can't rely on the reports that we've got in front of us. I just want some confirmation, please, of the validation that you've done independently of the reports that have been submitted by the applicant, that we can rely on the data we've got and that it's not fake, please.
I can assure this committee we take daylight and sunlight impacts to residents extremely, it's critical. The rigour of the assessment through the pre-application process and during the application was almost unprecedented. We employed an independent reviewer, which is the BRE, and they applied their own industry standards. So effectively, they were applying the guidelines that everybody have to work within. They verified those results, and as you've heard from the applicant, the assessment was refined during that process as well. So I don't believe we could have been more rigorous, and I'm very, very confident in the accuracy that gives you an informed position to make a decision.
Thank you. Henry Pollard.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, it follows on really from that last question. It's about the methodology for this, and you've just, Director, just explained that there is a BRE methodology to it that every architect and every planner would adhere to. So there's no margin of error or difference between the possibility of coming up with different figures?
Precisely. It's an industry-wide process, both in the kind of technical assessment as well and guidance about how we apply it. And as I say, it couldn't be more befitting to have the Building Research Establishment being the third-party reviewer as they publish those governmental guidance.
Thank you. Gabby Robertshaw.
Thank you very much, Chair. Cripplegate residents have been affected quite considerably by development on the fridges of their homes over the last few years. Could I ask, please, that our officers condition respite facilities should this scheme go ahead?
Thank you. Very good question.
Yes, certainly we've done this elsewhere on occasion, and we'd be more than happy to put that to the applicant and have an agreement.
And just on that, I think it's to Jackie Webster's credit that she brought that to the fore in One Golden Lane, which worked very successfully.
That's great. Thank you very much. Well, that's good to know. I will go to Nagat now. Nagat Qureshi.
Thank you, Chair. Hope you can hear me there. This relates to Rockmaker Arcade, where the information states 553 square metres. Could the officers indicate whether that's how much of an increase? I couldn't see that in the material, the extensive material provided. An indication of the east-west route also mentioned, is that just a one-way street? Operational hours for the kiosks that will be provided or be allowed to be operational in that area. The overspill in the Civic Plaza, which I think is this picture on our screens currently, how is that affected as well? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so as set out in the public realm section of the report, there is an increase in public realm across the whole site, including the arcade and the Civic Plaza, of approximately 1,000 square metres. It's 1,218 square metres in total.
So just to clarify, I just wanted to check with you, the current Ropemaker Arcade, is that brand new 553 square metres?
Yes,
Okay,
that's all new, yeah. On your second point around the east-west movement, it's a pedestrian route, so it's bi-directional, it's closed off to vehicles. And on your point around the overspill for restaurants and things like that, there will be a public realm management plan attached to the application. And through that, we'd look at how the space is cleaned, organised, also whether there's any outdoor seating and things like that as part of those proposals. And we could that would have to adhere to the principles of the Public London Charter, which sets out how we assess such things.
Thank you. Alison Garman.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. My question is about light spill from the building and really what controls there are. I know that these fins, which at one point it refers to the orientation of the fins varying in response to solar conditions. I don't think they move, but perhaps you could confirm. So Stuart referred to 22 Bishopsgate. That is a building that lights up at night. It is a beacon of light, props to hard work inside. But if you were sitting next to that or living next to that, as Speed House will be, you'd be having glare into your residential windows all the time. So what will prevent that glare from the lighting inside from spilling into Speed House, Cromwell and Heron Tower, please? In the suggested reference to amendments to the conditions, it suggested the blinds should perhaps be available both electrically and manually operated. Is that something that can be considered? Thank you.
In terms of the light trespass, which forms part of the environmental statement, the assessment concludes no significant effects. In terms of how we have conditioned these elements of the building, there's a lighting strategy in the condition that kind of regulates all of the different sort of systems of lighting around the building, in the open spaces. I just want to note that in terms of the existing and proposed situation, the window ratios have been reduced in half their size. The building has mitigated in terms of the light spill areas, in terms of the external fins being angled in certain directions, and that sort of mitigates itself, its own building on the on those specific impacts. I'm not sure if that covers the whole
manual blinds.
I think just to confirm, the lighting condition was a specific request of this committee. I think maybe, Keith, you were involved in that in your previous guise. So it's a critical way in which we can condition light levels and how they operate within the building.
Very good. Thank you. I will just quickly ask, because it's a hangover question, Tom Nankolos probably is the best officer, regarding the heritage question, consultation with heritage groups, but particularly the position of the Government Statutory Heritage Advisor, Historic England, and where they are on this and how that aligns with officers' views.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the question. So the Historic England, the statutory advisor, have not formally objected to the proposals, and they have raised some concerns about heritage impacts to a range of assets. These largely align with the officer's report and the findings of scales of harm therein. Objections have been received from other statutory amenity societies as well, such as 20th Century Society. These are all addressed in the report. Thank you.
Great. So just, you were a bit quick there, but just, I think what you said was the view that officers took, particularly on the less than substantial harm measure, is essentially the same that AG have taken.
Yes, that's right. So if I could use the Barbican as an example, the report finds a low level of less than substantial harm to the Barbican across all of its designations, predominantly caused by the presence of the proposals and the views from Willoughby High Walk. The oversailing to the south, which was mentioned, I think, by Councillor King, though comparatively modest in absolute numerical terms, does increase the presence of the building in these views and has been factored into our considerations. I would also say that when considering the Barbican, we need to take account of it, the fact that Historic England listed it as a single megastructure, a very large single entity, so we need to think of the views throughout and around the complex in coming to our conclusion. The impact on these views, as the report sets out, is largely benign. That is why we've reached a conclusion of less than substantial harm to the Barbican, and that conclusion, as I say, is shared by Historic England, and further officers have, as required by policy, given considerable importance and weight to these things.
Thank you. Thank you, Tom. That's very clear. I think John Fletcher, your hand was up earlier. Is that right? No, sorry. I was given misinformation. Philip Kelvin.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Chair. I'm going to ignore what the Chair said to me earlier, and I would like us to go back to Milton Court while I ask this question, if possible.
I mean,
it's a few clicks.
Do you mean to the slide?
Just the slide, yeah.
I mean, if it's easy enough, they can, but maybe you can ask the question.
I can ask the question at the same
we
time.
We can picture it in our heads.
You can picture it. Thank you. So my frustration here has always been around the area outside Ropemaker Arcade. And we seem to be in a very difficult position as a city. I'd love to just get some clarity on this, that one of the main entrances, as per the applicants and otherwise, is around the amount of foot traffic coming from Moorgate on Milton Court, which is the largest point. It is a private road that the city secured a Section 106 on to have as a designated area. It says here, private roadway. You can see this on the screen here. This will be the main thoroughfare through based on the data provided by the applicant. Yet, because there's a Section 106 and the designation caused by it, it can't be part of any agreement relating to Section 278 roadworks at all. It is a mess of a road with refuse build items, cars.
Is it a question, Philip?
So my question here to officers is, what can we do if this development was approved, bearing in mind that other developments around it that will actually make this a safe pedestrian walkway that has been highlighted as the chief walkway into Ropemaker Arcade next to the brewery loading bay? Thank you.
Thank you, Philip.
Good morning. My name is Jane Powers. I'm a Transport Planning and Development Officer. As already stated, Milton Court is a private road and a designated permissive path, and it was secured under Section 106 agreement relating to the Guildhall School. PCL assessment work presented in the submitted TA identifies an overall increase in pedestrian movements on streets with particular reference to Milton Court. And this reflects the east-west desire line from Liverpool Street Station to the site. It also overlaps with the desire line to Moorgate Station. However, having said that, the PCL assessment indicates for the busiest morning peak, the PCL would change from A+ down to A-, so still well above the city's B+ criterion. In the PM peak, the PCL would change from an A+ to an A. It is noted that the applicant is willing to enter into a planning obligation to secure improvements to Milton Court, working with Brookfield and the owner. With respect to pedestrian movement, the proposal is considered compliant with local plan policies, DM 16.1 and DM 16.2, as well as emerging policy 81. And PCL matters are considered in full in paragraph 14.60 of the report.
Just to add on that, I think we're becoming quite experts on managing these routes through developments. We've negotiated through this committee a great deal of them, and they are managed through Section 106 agreements to ensure that they work 24 hours.
Is there a condition that can be imposed to improve the safety of pedestrians here, bearing in mind...
Oh, we've lost the microphone. While you're reconnecting, can we just, I'm just going to propose a motion that we extend the meeting as we're required to do. Looking around the room, we're happy to do that. Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you. That was very passionate of me. Specifically, my question is, we've heard from the applicant around how they will be doing single deliveries, but the brewery, which we can see here with their loading bay, has multiple deliveries today for the very nature of their operations. Are there any plans or conditions that you think could be imposed to improve the safety of pedestrians as they cross this private roadway into an articulated lorry opposite? Thank you.
I think while officers are coming, one thing, Philip, I would say is these are not irrelevant matters, they are relevant, but I think typically speaking, pedestrian flows, operational movements are dealt with under condition, as you said, and that's typically a post-consent process. That said, you have put the question, so we'll have it answered.
In terms of servicing, the existing servicing arrangement at the site is a largely unmanaged process with 2 separate service yards, no service vehicle cap, and no peak hour restrictions, as well as no current use of consolidation at the site. The proposed servicing strategy for the site will be a highly managed one, as set out in the outline delivery and service management plan, which accompanied the planning application. The proposal includes a dedicated on-street servicing yard accessed from Milton Street. It includes 3 off-street loading bays for vehicles to enter and exit in forward gear. On this basis, all delivery vehicles, servicing and waste collection would use this yard, and all servicing would be internal to the site. I think a key point to note is the proposed servicing strategy is underpinned by the use of an off-site consolidation centre, supported by a logistics consultant. And on this basis, a daily cap of 50 service vehicle movements has been proposed, and that includes everything in terms of facilities management, waste collection, and excludes pedal cycles, cargo bikes, and emergency vehicles. The assessment is based on an intentionally conservative 50% consolidation rate, and the city has seen evidence consolidation rates in excess of 90%. For example, in relation to 8 Bishopsgate, the latest detailed servicing vehicle log data shows a daily average of 14 service vehicle trips at that site, and that's a site that's comparable to the proposed development.
Thank you. We do need to be concise, please. Thank you. Philip, did that answer your question?
No.
Do you want to restate the question? Or do you want us to move on? I think we should perhaps move on. Thank you. I have got, looking down, I'm crossing everyone's name off. Tana, did you have another question?
Yes, I do have a question. Coming back to, I'm sorry, I'm going to stay sitting down, but hopefully I can be heard.
It's fine.
I don't know which officer, it might be Gwyn, I'm not sure, will I be able to answer this? I'm coming back to Historic England. I understand that Historic England's position was they haven't objected to the plan, but they haven't supported it either. They haven't agreed with it. And that their concern was the scale and bulk of the scheme. I think they, if I'm right, and I'd like to be confirmed to be correct, that they were included in consultation. Some amendments were made, which they refer to in their report, but essentially their position remains that they recommend more significant changes made to the scheme to address their concerns about the mass and bulk. That's the main issue for Historic England, and that didn't change when the amendments were made. So that was Historic England's position.
Yes, that's correct. That's in both their consultation letters, that is what is said. They, of course, welcome some of the amendments made to improve, particularly in their view, the impact on the St Bride's spire and the view from Hungerford Bridge. But what you've stated is correct.
And so just one follow-up, and then I'll be finished. Was consideration given, therefore, to reducing the bulk and the mass of the building in order to have less of an effect on the heritage assets of the Barbican and the Cromwell Tower and the whole conservation area? Was consideration given to reducing the mass and the bulk?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, the story of this proposal really has been one of trying to reconcile the city's strategic ambitions as set out in our policies around economic growth and cultural provision, and respecting our very sensitive baseline, which across the city is sensitive. You know, we have multiple overlapping designations everywhere. You know, the Barbican is no different. Of course, it has the very important residential centre to set it apart from other places. The proposal, you know, can be thought of as a way of striking the right balance between these policy ambitions and the sensitivity of the context and the baseline. So throughout the pre-app process, there was a constant kind of pushing and pulling of the mass to try and arrive at a point where this balance was struck in the most appropriate way. Now, we took into account various things, not just the Barbican estate, but also St. Bride's. The Barbican was a key influence of the scheme in terms of its heritage asset designation and also its setting. For instance, the elevation line of the west side of the scheme was moved back by 8 metres in the pre-app process, a significant amendment to the mass, which would have lost a lot of space as a response to the Cromwell Tower and wanting to increase the breathing space between the two sides. As well as this, the height of the proposal was adjusted in response to the St. Bride's views. There were multiple overlapping kind of considerations here. And what the proposals do successfully, in our view, is strike the right balance between the conservation of those and the growth that we require in our policy.
Can I just come back on that? Because
Sorry, can I just elaborate on that? I think it's important to note that Historic England's remit is narrowly defined by heritage. Everybody in this room is looking at the wider planning equation. That's as a statutory planning authority. That's absolutely, through that report, we're very strongly of the view that the public benefits in this case outweighs any heritage harm, and that's set out in the report. And that's incumbent on us as a planning authority to come to that conclusion.
Of course, and I understand all of those points. I just want to come back to this point about taking everything into account. Obviously, the 46% increase in the size of the building as it currently stands, that's not purely on economic grounds. I mean, the applicant has mentioned words such as equally complementing the big chap that is the Barbican and effectively maximising, I think another word he used was maximising the development in order to, you know, make it, it sounds as if it's being made as big as possible, potentially for economic grounds, rather than the possibility of making it a bit smaller so that it fits a bit better with the skyline, with Barbican, with the amenities, with all the other factors that you need to take into account. Because this is a tall building.
Sorry, can we get to a question, please?
Yeah, sorry, this is a tall building which shouldn't effectively be there next to a conservation area, my understanding on the London plan.
So there's two questions. One is, well, you know what they are, Tom.
Yeah, so on the question of the site and finding the right amount of bulk, you know, the GLA and the London plan set out a need to optimise the capacity of sites. That's across London, but particularly in the CAS, so the Central Activity Zone where this site is located, like the whole of the city. And that has been a guiding principle throughout. Similarly, an equal, on a par with that, guiding principle has been the setting of the site, the residential amenity, and the settings of the heritage assets, and arriving at a design which reconciles all of these very complicated things, you know. And we have sought amendments to consistently throughout the process actually reduce the bulk of the scheme, which began as a very large scheme. The developer has done that several times in the pre-app process in response to heritage assets I've already mentioned. And then subsequently post-submission, a further reduction in height has been made, which is significant. So we feel that the proposal now, taking all of these matters into account, strikes that right balance. On the question of the tall building status, the existing building on the site is a tall building as defined in policy. The report sets that out. And that is a material consideration for you in decision making, but it is, of course, only one material consideration amongst many. And the other question that surrounds it is the appropriateness of the application site for a tall building in the first place. There is a very rigorous assessment in the officer report, the London Plan D9 section, which sets out why the site is acceptable in principle. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tom.
Thank you, Tana. OK, folks, we need to get to the next stage shortly. There are a couple more names. Just again, if your question's been asked, no need to ask it. Keith Bottomley, your name was on my list.
Chair, my question has just been asked about the tall building question.
Yeah. OK, the tall building question's been asked. Very good, thank you. Deborah Oliver.
Yes, if I could build on a question by Philip Kelvin. On the original floor plan that we saw earlier, there looked like there was 2 gates on Ropemaker Arcade, but in none of the visuals do we actually see that. And I noticed in the email from the Design Out Crime officer that they were talking, he was recommending that the arcade would be closed at night. And I just wondered whether his recommendations to have a Secure by Design Silver Award standard was going to be a condition. So it was really the Ropemaker Arcade. I was just wanting to query whether there are gates coming in and out, and really the broader security, anti-social behaviour contingencies were going to be covered. So that was my first question.
Could they answer that first,
Yeah.
and then we'll get to more questions?
Yep, sure. So on the gates on Ropemaker Arcade, there are gates at either end, which will be closed between midnight and 5 a.m. to sort of manage antisocial behaviour and rough sleeping and things like that.
Great, thank you. And you have another one?
Yep. And but the gates aren't shown on any of the illustrations. Is that right?
No, I don't believe they are, but they're shown on the plans, which is crucially what we're approving.
Right.
And we have conditions as well that would look at all the built surfaces for the public realm. So through that, we'd agree their design and appearance, and we generally with these kind of things, we try and make sure that they're discreet and.
And I'm sure you would consider if perhaps moving forward from midnight, with it being a residential area, if it was appropriate to close the gates a bit earlier. But I shall leave that to officers. The other point really was a lot of the discussion has been around sort of like major adverse impact on sort of the residential, the neighbourhoods. Just wanted to clarify from my mind, do officers think that there is major adverse impact on the residential communities, and does that impact on our policies at all?
Thank you.
Thank you. Major adverse impacts is a clarification within the environmental impact assessment as a technical terminology that goes through, as you would have had set out in the report, both here and at previous items before you. Where the findings have concluded that across a number of environmental considerations, but for instance on daylight sunlight, and that is corroborated with our third-party review by BRE as we've already set out, then officers, yes, would work with our conclusions in that technical assessment. However, as is set out in the report, the absolute terms and the existing conditions also have to be taken into account, and a conclusion of major adverse impact in and of itself does not render the proposal to be unacceptable. Officers, planning officers, as professionals, have a remit to be able to assess this broadly against the development plan as a whole and within the respective amenity conditions that we're assessing that against, with advice from our third-party reviewer. So we will look at a broad range of amenity impacts and what the absolute impacts on those particular properties, windows, environmental conditions may be.
Thank you. Marianne Fredericks.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to go back to Tanya's point about historic England. Their original objection raised a number of concerns about the bulk and massing behind the Barbican Centre and also its impact on St Bride's. And you're quite right, they did a second letter on the 12th of March, but they highlight that it's to be read in conjunction with the original objection. And in there, they do say that one of their key points of concern was the views from behind Andrew's house, the overbearing presence on the Barbican estate, which they believe is still retained. Although you've lowered 3 floors on one side, there's still that overbearing mass and bulk, which they believe had been slightly reduced, but was still a major issue as far as they were concerned. In their summary, okay, it's a polite negative. I take it as a polite negative comment rather than an objection. Yeah. But they did ask officers, because they still had concerns, to seek amendments, safeguards, and further information. So can I ask, what amendments did you seek further to actually reduce the impact on the bulk behind the Barbican and St Andrew's House and Speed House? Because I can't see that you have sought any further amendments, and instead you've actually weighed up the public benefits versus the harm, but you haven't really addressed Historic England's concerns about the negative impact on the heritage of the Barbican Centre in particular. And a second question, please, is about, I'm going to go back to data because it's in black and white. This gentleman says that his floor layout for his flat is completely different to that contained in the daylight and sunlight report, and therefore he believes that the report is wrong. It will have an impact on his daylight and sunlight, and he put the photographs in, which I think were very clear for all of us to see. He definitely has a larger loss of sun coming to his property. And therefore, I am somewhat confused as to how we have the representations being made which believe one course of
Can you
action.
get to a question, please?
And we have the applicant who says it's something different. And whilst you say there's been some independent evaluation, obviously it goes back to how good the original data is. And if we've been looking at the wrong plans of flats, is it perceivable that actually the data that has been checked and collated by officers and independent people could still be wrong because there was an error at the very outset with the data and the floor plans and everything else involved with that? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Marianne. Tom.
Thank you for the question. I'll take the Historic England point first, just to remind members they didn't formally object to the proposals, but instead raised concerns. I think it's important we think about what their remit is here. As my colleague Gwyn alluded, they are the expert advisor on the historic environment only. They do not need to see this proposal in the round necessarily, but only to see its heritage impacts. They have advised us of those heritage impacts, and we have taken that advice very largely. We have agreed with it. We have sought amendments to address many things, including mainly the impact to residential amenity, but also heritage, giving great weight and considerable weight and importance to it, as we're required to do. We have done that. The scheme has been amended and is before you today. Historic England, it's, well, of course, within their remit, and they are entitled to ask for more amendments and more amendments and more amendments to get to a notional scheme that causes no harm. But that is, in our view, not reasonable or practical here in view of the harms being caused, which we consider to be of a low magnitude and justified by the proposals and outweighed by the benefits of the scheme. Thank you.
To answer the question on the room layouts, where room layouts have been, where they are available, they have been used as part of the assessment. Where they haven't been used, or where they're not available, the applicant has relied on the typical room layout as found through the planning history of the site. This is a very standard industry approach, an approach which is accepted by officers, an approach which is also accepted by the BRE, the third-party inspectors. So we are very confident that the assessment that's taken place is compliant with BRE methodologies.
Thank you. Final question from Alistair Moss.
Thank you, Chair. Can I ask officers about making a robust decision here? Shravan Joshi has dealt with the fake allegation, and Chief Planning Officer responded to that. The other serious allegation was in relation to the process here, which I think was along the lines of that informal views have been made by people who are not decision makers on this forum, which were then changed and stakeholders were not informed of that change of view. Can we just have an assurance as a committee that as far as you're aware there is no procedural defect in what we're dealing with in relation to that or any other matter? Thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely, I can confirm that. This has been subject to very rigorous external legal review as well.
I missed Liz King's hand, so Liz, you're the last question.
Thank you, Chair. I have a question about oversailing, particularly on the impact on the brewery and the conservation area there. I'd like to know how that enhances and preserves a conservation area as any development should, and also what's going to be the effect on the trees, the existing established trees that are on Silk Street, opposite Speed House, and if we could talk about oversailing that way.
Thank you, Liz.
Just to take the first point about the brewery conservation area, which interestingly Historic England found not to be harmed by the proposals, we have found that a low level of harm would be caused to the conservation area and the listed building directly underneath the proposal through this matter of oversailing. So that's all factored into the assessment and in the planning balance at the end. I hope the report is clear on that. In relation to the trees, I shall turn to a knowledgeable colleague about these matters.
I'll just answer the question about the trees. So regarding the existing trees around the site, the arboricultural report submitted by the applicant seeks to protect and retain the trees in place. In the case of damage during construction, there are a set of conditions that have been developed in consultation with our city gardens officers, and this would require the retention, and in the case of damage, they would be replaced with costs secured via Section 106 agreement to be covered by the developers. In the case of loss, there would be a financial contribution towards the amenity value of the tree that would be contributing towards the Healthy Streets plan.
Thank you very much. Now, we're going to move to the debate session, but I do have one. I'm concerned, Philip, your question was never answered, and it was an overhang, and I'm going to give officers the opportunity, if they can, to answer that. I don't know, maybe that's a Peter Wilson question or a Gwyn.
This was in relation to the amount of control that we can apply on the private piece of land.
Specifically, I think we've covered that bit, Gwyn. I think specifically it's very difficult to consider this development when there is a loading bay for the adjacent building right next to the arcade here. So my question is what conditions could we impose, or is that via city operations or streets and walkways, to make this specific pinch point safer? And how should we take that into account as part of this application, Gwyn?
Okay, there are specific conditions in terms of the delivery to ensure that there is no evidence to suggest there's a problem. It basically is as part of the application, given the consolidation and off-peak. So we don't envisage it to be a problem, but there will be a management plan in terms of the deliveries. And also, if there are any issues, then that would be subsumed within the 278.
Sorry, Gwyn, just to interrupt you. I have no questions on the consolidation of the deliveries of this site. I think it's very difficult to ignore that there will be an additional 2,000 people or additional 3,000 on this walkway, according to the data, for the unconsolidated deliveries next door to this site.
What we can't do is impose a condition on a neighbouring neighbour to enter into consolidation. We can talk to them, and often in the city cluster we've managed to convince. We can manage that, but that was budgeted in all of the calculations in terms of pedestrian safety, pedestrian movement, and so on. As I say, it doesn't indicate a problem, but there are conditions, and there's also 278 work that we can do to mitigate or actually improve that situation.
Thank you, Gwen. My understanding from the numbers, average occupancy is that the proposed building would only have about 1,500 more people on site than the other numbers we've seen. We're now in the debate, which is the final leg, colleagues. Reminder, you may now have a view, you may not wish to express it, but simply to do that through the vote. If you are so moved, you can speak. You don't have to. We've had a long session, lots of questions, lots of answers, so I'm just going to look around and see if anyone really wants to say anything. If you, committee, are so moved, we can just move to vote. I'm going to move to okay, Liz King, Philip.
Thank you. Look, I've asked a lot of pointed questions here, and I think I have a number of specific concerns here that have been fairly frustrating during the process, and I think the city has somewhat hamstrung itself with various Section 106s in relation to the facts on the ground as the member for Coleman Street. I would like to say, having asked these questions, that on balance to my fellow members here, that I am supportive of this development. I think that this is a much unloved commercial quarter. I've worked in this area and on Chiswell Street and on this roads for a long time now, and I think that this will add some vibrancy to the front of the Barbican Centre. I acknowledge the concerns of residents, but I also acknowledge that this, as according to officers, is a dense urban environment, even if people might disagree with my perspective on that. But I think there are definitely some things for this development, especially in relation to our planning policy and what it can do to this area. But I would like to say to members that if this is approved, and I will be supporting this, that those on streets and walkways and otherwise related to city operations can look to improve the streets and walkways across Chiswell Street, across Milton Street, across Milton Court, that we as committee members have spoken about numerous times with the other developments and cumulative effect of the regeneration of the Brookfield site, the Montcalm Brewery, and now this site. There will be a cumulative impact to those in this area that needs to be addressed, both from safety and also for an improvement of use and experience that we expect that we have in other parts of the city. That said, I will be supporting this application. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Philip. I think that's a really wise idea, and I can see the Chair of Streets and Walkways is nodding, so I think we've got agreement. Liz King?
Yes, I have similar concerns about, I know we can't think about it in terms of this application, but the cumulative consented developments already on this street and the amount of traffic and the amount of extra pedestrians, if this is going to be not just for the office, but for the throughway to all these fabulous cultural things you've got lined up, that we have to have a way of being able to look at how people move around in the areas where we're putting in extra deliveries and everything else. And if it's streets and walkways that can do that, I look forward to you, John. And just, obviously I represent Cripplegate Ward, and this application presents significant and interrelated harms alongside the material weakness in the evidence base. The officer report itself acknowledges major adverse daylight impacts to Speed House, Cromwell Tower, and the Heron, all in Cripplegate. Independent analysis raises serious concerns about methodology, including incorrect baseline modeling, misclassification of rooms, the selective sampling of a limited number of rooms, and, as the BRE makes clear, unsupported assumptions about perceptibility. Even on the applicant's own data, the impacts remain major, adverse, and significant, affecting a substantial number of homes. The scale of the building also worsens wind conditions at ground levels, undermining the functionality of the proposed public realm. These impacts are not resolved through the design itself, but are left to mitigation at a later stage, indicating that the scheme has not addressed microclimate issues at the outset. The transport and servicing strategy is similarly deficient. Servicing is concentrated on Milton Street without addressing cumulative impacts from other consented schemes. The baseline, tree retention and biodiversity outcomes remain unresolved. Significant harm to existing mature trees is acknowledged, as it was on the site visit, and their long-term survival has not been demonstrated given the constraints of the underground infrastructure. Security and public safety are also incomplete. Police advice requires further detailed measures at a later stage, indicating the key aspects of secured by design have not yet been incorporated into the physical design of this development. These concerns sit along the cumulative heritage harm to the Barbican estate as a listed ensemble and registered park and garden, together with direct impacts on two conservation areas, including oversailing into the brewery conservation area, which increases enclosure and visual prominence within that space. This engages the statutory duties under Section 66 and 72.
Can you start to wrap up, please?
Yes, I'm absolutely done. Members are being asked to accept acknowledged harm, uncertain evidence base, and reliance on future conditions to resolve fundamental issues. It has not been demonstrated that the benefits clearly outweigh the harms, and I move that the application be deferred.
Thank you. We're still in the debate, so we'll go to Oliver Sells. KC.
Thank you very much, Chairman. It's very nice to be back. Some things have changed, some things haven't. The weight of paperwork is as heavy as ever, but the way in which the committee handles it is as careful, as I recall, and as thorough. I don't propose to take more than a moment, but I have read all the papers and listened very carefully to everything that's been said. I agree very much with Philip Kelvin, as it happens. I think that he puts it absolutely right. There are really no grounds, it seems to me, no serious grounds to oppose this application. It's a site which has, as he rightly observed, had a checkered and unattractive history over the last 20 years. And as we develop the Barbican and the cultural area around the city, it needs significant investment, and it needs a significant change of an economic nature. And that is what basically the City of London is for. It is intended to drive economic growth, jobs for young people starting out, businesses connecting us to the wider world. And if we fail to take the opportunities which this kind of development offers, because of all kinds of what I'm going to call societal, local objections, then we really will not succeed in making the city a place where people want to come from across the world. And I think we have to look at the bigger picture, the economic growth that it brings to the country and generally to the City of London. And I have no doubt that this is an application we should approve. Thank you very much.
Oliver, thank you. Henry Pollard.
No, sorry.
Oh, you're okay? Siobhan.
Thank you, Chair. And just to follow on from Mr. Sells, Oliver Sells, KC, I think that there's a piece around beyond the red line in the scheme that we do need to consider, which is the fact that city rents are going up month on month. We're hitting record rents across the square mile. One of the main reasons for that is because there is just not enough quality office space coming to the market. And the fact that the applicant brought the investor, a global investor, to the forum today speaks volumes about the fact they are not just bagging an application, as we've seen other developers do in the past. They actually are ready to deliver much, much needed office space in the square mile, and we desperately need this, not necessarily to cool the market down, but actually to meet that huge demand that there is for offices. We have established that the process that the officers have been through has been thorough, and I've got to say, this began before I was even chair of planning. These conversations began when Mr. Moss was chair of planning, and to have got to where we are today with it is a compromise scheme. It is a scheme that takes best advantage of the footprint that it has, but is sympathetic to its surroundings. And I think it is a good compromise, because planning is a compromise, to have achieved what we have. And on that basis, Chairman, I will be supporting it.
Thank you very much. And now it's Alison Kelman.
Thank you, Chairman. I agree that something needs to be done with the site. It's whether or not this is the building in the right place at the right time. I was persuaded by the comments that Jackie Webster made about the values that we need. And they're the values, I think, that the corporation espouse to have a destination city that takes into account all of its occupiers, the residents and the businesses and the visitors. And so I will be brief, as the Chairman has asked me to do, to not list all the items that I would say cause me to feel that those marginal areas of impact on heritage, impact on the residents definitely, the conservation areas, the minimal urban greening, etc., all cause me to vote against this application. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Alison. Nice and concise. Marianne Fredericks.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry. I'm mindful that the decision we take today, that building was going to be up there for over 100 years. That's a really important decision we are going to take today, and it's a very prominent location, especially in terms of protecting its heritage. I believe that planning is a compromise, but I sometimes believe that we can have a better compromise. And I really wonder why and how we found ourselves in this position where we have willing residents who want to work, they want development, they want to work with the applicant, and we have a really experienced applicant who has put up some fantastic schemes in the city and is used to working with the community. So I really am confused to why we are in this position, whether data's correct, information maps, everything. I truly believe that Stuart can work with the Barbican residents to produce a far better compromise scheme, because this is a prominent location. The impact on the heritage has been identified by Historic England. It hasn't been addressed enough, in my opinion. The overhang, I think, will affect the public realm. It's the bulk as well. That needs to be scaled back. So it is difficult because Stuart has done some great schemes, but equally, I think the impacts on residential amenity, the impacts on heritage, the sheer sort of greed, if you like, of the development, encroaching on practically all parts of the red line around it and overhanging it. I think that it could be scaled back, the public benefits could still be doable, it would have less impacts on the heritage, less impacts on the residents, and I think there's a scheme there that can be found, and I think it should be found, and therefore I will be refusing, Chair.
Thank you, Marianne. Gabby Robertshaw.
Thank you very much, Chair. City living has many benefits: the proximity to culture, good food and open spaces, and the residents, as we've heard today, have been very vocal about this scheme, not least from their lived experience, both good and bad. The building certainly makes a statement, And the current application, as with other SOM buildings, is no different. Lipton Rogers, I've enjoyed visiting their buildings on Bishopsgate, but somehow 1 Silk Street seeks to do battle with the Barbican, not to work with it. Its dominance threatening to change the skyline forever. I echo Liz King in asking for a deferment.
Very good. I had Tana and then Keith Bottomley, and then I think we'll wrap up and vote.
Thank you. I hesitate to say this because I don't always agree with Gabby, but I agree with her 100%. This, to my mind, looking at it, this development does not complement the Barbican Centre as it should, because the Barbican is one of our jewels, and therefore this building should complement it, not overpower it. So I'll be voting against.
Thank you. Keith Bottomley.
Chair, thank you very much. In my view, this application strengthens the square mile's long-term economic resilience, and that is something that has been referred to by other members of this committee and has got to be at the centre of our considerations. There is, as Shravan Joshi says, a rising shortage of top-tier office space, which we cannot ignore. The city must, therefore, in my view, intensify to remain globally competitive, and that is really at the heart of this application. There is some fantastic new pedestrian routes and retail frontages, much needed redesigned entrance plaza facing the Barbican, some great new cultural and community spaces, as we've heard, and significant modifications have been made during the planning process. 40% of the existing basement and foundations are being retained, and significantly more energy efficient this new building will be than the previous one. Members of the committee, it aligns with the planning policies around commercial intensification. We must balance commercial growth against heritage and climate considerations. And very importantly, we have had strong, clear and repeated assurances from our officers on the accuracy of the information before us. I will be supporting this application.
Thank you. Josephine Hayes, and welcome back, by the way.
For me, the basic problem is the height, mass and bulk of this proposal. And I cannot reconcile that with the numerous policies of which the proposal is in breach. I also wish to adopt and agree with Alderwoman Gowman's objections, and for those reasons I will not be voting in favour.
Thank you very much. So I'm not going to summarise the debate because I think you heard what everyone said in their own words. I will just give you my view. So Liz, you didn't say move, but you're moving a deferral.
I did, and then you said no.
So, well, you can still move, and you had a seconder. So this is back to the deferral from the very beginning. Liz is moving a deferral of the scheme, seconded by Marianne. I mean, we had a relatively definitive answer on this the first time round. Do we need a debate on it? We can now have a vote. Who's in favour of deferring? I mean, we're so close to the actual vote now. Those against? That's 17-10 against, so we're not deferring. I'll just try and briefly summarise. I mean, I think obviously we've heard a real strength of feeling in the room today. That's understandable. This will happen in sites that are close to residential pockets like the Barbican. I do think it's important to note this scheme was considerably reduced since the previous submission, considerably reduced. And whatever people have said about the quality of the consultation process, and there are different views on that, and it, by the way, as I said, is not a material consideration, the outcome of that process was a reduced building. Pushed further back, pushed down, and actually the scheme that has been proposed is only 15 metres higher than the building that is currently sitting on the site. We have good relations now, I would say, with Historic England. It's very unusual for Historic England to write really supportive letters. Their remit tends to be them raising concerns. Them not objecting to this is pretty much as good as you get on something like this. And as Gwyn said, our responsibility is much broader than just considering one narrow aspect, which is heritage harm. We have to think about the growth and the other benefits that Oliver and Keith so well talked about too. If this isn't approved, it will become an idle site, a dead site. That's very clear. There's a dead site on 120 Fleet Street. It's a demolished site. The building would still be there, but this is just demolition that's a bit more polite.
Sorry, can I just raise a point of
No,
order?
well, what's the point of order?
I don't think you could suggest that these particular owners of this land are anything like the owners of 120.
Oh, I wasn't suggesting. I was saying there's a different... okay, I'm sorry about 120 Fleet is a dead site at the moment. This would be a non-viable site if it's rejected, and it would just be a non-working space and a really crucial space that's so close to the Elizabeth line. It has floor plates of an interesting size for major global occupiers. If we approve, I really wouldn't be surprised if we get a major global occupier. We need more of them in the city as well. I was kind of taken by the re-enlivened public realm, the new entrance to the Barbican. I'm not sure if it was said, but it would reopen at the time that the Barbican Centre itself would reopen. So you would have this new, if you like, front door carriageway into the Barbican Arts Centre itself. This is a prime site. It's vital for the city to thrive, to have sites like this enlivened and brought back into use. It's a dead site. So I will be supporting it on those grounds. And I would just, I suppose... Liz, did you... I would just say, from my time chairing the Barbican Arts Centre, I spent a lot of time in the centre. The intent of the Barbican Centre, when it was built, was to re-energise and rebuild a city that had been destroyed by enemy action. It was part of urban regrowth and urban regeneration, and it sits within that context. And if you look at the design of the building, it matches that intent, in the sense that the dwelling areas that the committee will have seen when they visited largely look inwards into the green, quiet spaces, and it's the back, the bedrooms, the less frequently dwelled spaces that look out onto the city. And why do we think Chamberlain, Powell and Bond did that? Because they knew if they were successful in their mission of regenerating the city would be building and would be growing. So I think it is, in my view, slightly a perversion for us to use the Barbican kind of totemically as a yoke to hold back a building just next door, which is trying to do exactly the same thing that the Barbican did 50 years ago. I think it's just another chapter in the same story. And so with all of that in mind, I will certainly be voting to approve the application today. Colleagues, I'm going to take us to a vote. You have...
Chair, may I put a few amendments to conditions before we vote?
Let me just... What's the...
Table.
If someone wants to table an amendment without notice, you should pause for 5 minutes whilst we determine the wording of the amendment and get advice on whether or not it's in order.
So Liz wants to table an amendment to the condition. Can we just, we're going to pause for a moment, and we'll have a quick chat with Liz. We have the provision to briefly pause the meeting for this.
Just amendments to the condition schedule. Can we do that? Yeah, we can take that out. As long as it doesn't then get...
Okay, colleagues, so Liz had a number of suggested conditions. That's going to take forever to get that up on screen and print it out and discuss. So I'm going to propose that in your pack you'll see what we're being asked to vote on. There are several items being asked to vote on. One of them is the conditions. That item we can discuss at a future meeting. So today instead we'll be asking to vote on planning permission, listed building consent and the other inter alia items. The conditions, and I know Gwen, we talked about this morning, you're content with this, can come back. And by then hopefully officers will be fully informed of what they think will be acceptable to the committee, having listened to the debate today. if you're content with that, colleagues, I just want to check. I think that's so. That allows us to make some progress and feels like a pragmatic approach. So I will ask you to vote on three things. First, you have three choices of how to vote on the one thing, which is we've just discussed. First of all is to agree with officer recommendations and to approve. The second is if you instead want to vote to refuse. And the third vote will be if you're abstaining. So I'll take them in that order. Are we ready to count? And we have to hold your hand up high and probably for quite a long time because we have some history of miscounting this committee.
Tell us the page.
What page are we on? Just for clarity.
68.
Page 68. Okay, we good to go?
Yep.
Okay. We just removed it. We've just removed that one out of that item.
It's not what's on 68. It's 68 minus.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Yeah. So just to clarify, it's 68 minus the item regarding the obligations, the conditions.
Recommendation 4.
Yeah, which is item 4. Gwyn, I'm just checking with you as planning director. You content with that?
Having no sight of what the proposed amendment is, I mean, I'm comfortable with you to carry on.
I think then we can try and do our best to fold them in. I think making progress probably would be productive. Very good. Okay. Therefore, with that amendment made, all those in favour of granting planning permission and listed buildings consent, please raise your hand. Keep them up. Keep them up. Do you want to double check? Double check?
Both did it.
16.
Okay. Those against? Those abstentions? There being none. Therefore, the votes in favour of granting permission were 16. Votes against were 11. No abstentions. Planning permission, listed buildings consent are granted.
Sorry, can I have my vote recorded, please?
And we
Can I
can
have my
record,
vote recorded
and we will
in the
record your
minute?
vote, Marianne.
Thank you.
Order. Sorry.
Disgrace.
Well, you're entitled to your opinion. I think that's rather inappropriate for you to call members of this committee corrupt. These people have come as volunteers, have given hours of their time doing their statutory responsibility, and I will defend them. Can we have security? There are people swearing and shouting at this committee.
Excuse me, Chair. May I have my vote recorded as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Very happy to record anyone whose vote they would wish recorded. I think. Thank you, sir. Have a good day. Okay, I think the rest of the items on the agenda were for information.
I've not received any questions in advance.
There were no questions in advance. There's no other business. Therefore, colleagues, thanks for getting through this. It was a long, tough meeting. Appreciate your time today. We're now ending the meeting.